across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it is Petrie with you now until 1 o'clock, and I do want to talk to you about this spending review. As I was just saying to Kev there, it felt, well, like with everything these days, they always preempt it, don't they? We knew a lot of this that was coming. We knew that the NHS was going to get more. They always test it out first, see what the headline's going to look like, which is perhaps what they should have done with the winter fuel allowance. But hey-ho. But they always try and test these things out. So there was nothing really new, nothing really interesting. I thought it was lacking quite a lot of detail. But this was about spending. It wasn't about cuts. But I do think, though, to say, you know, we know that a lot of this money is going to have to come from cuts. So I think it should have been part of the spending review, in my view. But I'd like to know whether you think she got her priorities right, whether you think that this is exactly what you wanted. She also wants you to be patient. She wants you to be patient. And I think that our patience has either run out or is running a little thin after so many years of having promises made to us and not having them delivered to us. So I'd like to know from you about what you make of this spending review. What you make of it, where the money's going. I mean, it's got to be good news, hasn't it, that the NHS is getting an extra 3%, 29 billion per year. But it depends what it's spent on, because that isn't anything to do with infrastructure. And a lot of the hospitals that we know are sort of crumbling, falling down, or about to end their what is it, PPP licences. So there's going to be extra spending there. And while we're at it, is that 30 billion just going to be absorbed into pay rises? Because we know that nurses and junior doctors are going to come back for more money. So is that ring fenced? Is that where does that money go, and what is it used for? So lots and lots of questions as usual, but not many, it would seem, asked of the Chancellor. They were all patting themselves on the back. The Chancellor wasn't really pushed into any great corner, I thought, but let's see what happens. But that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight. Do you think that this all sounds doable, that this all sounds ridiculous? That it, you know, the whole idea of getting migrants out of hotels, they're fair enough, but where are they going to go? And how much is that going to cost? And what is that going to do? So there was a lot of it that I just went, I mean, I could have said that, but it doesn't mean I've costed it. It doesn't mean that there was no mention of the 2-child cap, was there? Nothing about that. So, interesting to see the direction that she's gone, although it's predictable and dull. But I suppose predictability and dullness does tell us something, at least. But so give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about this. 03444 499 1000. Text your messages to talk 87222, and you can WhatsApp as well on the same phone number, 03444 499 1000. And you can also leave voice notes if that's what you would like to do. Right, before that, we have Amy Fischer coming into the studio, former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party. I think she'll have a lot to say about the way this has all been communicated to us. So she'll be in for an hour going through the newspapers for Thursday. Andy Lound, our favourite spaceman, will be here. Are we trapped inside a black hole? And what does it mean if we are? Ria Freeman will be here talking to us about the PR disasters and the good bits of PR. Elon versus Trump. What do we think? Good or bad PR? Elon's now gone, oops, sorry, I went a bit far. Anyway, we'll be discussing that as well. But first, let's turn our attention to the announcement today. Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced her spending review, setting out budgets for various government departments. She confirmed 39 billion for social and affordable housing, a boost in defence spending, a plan to end costly asylum hotels within the next 4 years, as well as an extension of the £3 bus fare cap in England for the next 2 years. The bus fare cap in Manchester and London are a separate issue. Some departments, though, will face cuts, Foreign Office being one, Home Office being one of the others. So there will be cuts. But what does all of this mean for the future? Vicky Price joins me now, who's a Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Vicky, thank you so much. I know you'll have been poring through these figures. Is this austerity by another name, or is it just skipped austerity?
It's not really austerity. It could be for some departments, because you're quite right. I mean, some things go up and others have to come down, because we still have the envelope in terms of day-to-day spending of an increase overall across all departments of just 1.2% per annum over the 3-year period. So that's not a very big increase. We have had more of an increase in the first 2 years of this government. We haven't had the first 2 years yet, but the first one, nevertheless, was up to 25, 26. And then we have whatever had happened before between July and April. So you have those years which got quite a substantial increase in spending. This spending review starts next year, from next April, not, of course, this year. So a lot of what we've heard today is still to come, if you like. So there's always a question of, will it indeed materialize, or is it going to change at any point? But nevertheless, the envelope was given, a lot of spending early on, and then just 1.2% over the following 3 years. That means, as you rightly said, if you have health, receiving an awful lot of extra money. If you have some of the housing side, receiving quite a lot, particularly as we heard, for a longer period over the next 10 years, spending on particularly affordable housing, and a lot of borrowing additionally to spend on infrastructure, then I would say that yes, austerity for some departments, a lot of money for others, and a lot of borrowing by the government, particularly on capital spending, which is overall, if the markets looked at it, it's not austerity, it's actually borrowing an awful lot of money. I expected the bond market to react. It didn't react. It seems to think that that's fine. And yet we had an extra 113 billion of borrowing that will take place over the period to fund some of the infrastructure projects that were announced today. So it's a real mix, and the markets, for the moment, seem to be giving Rachel Reeves the benefit of the doubt.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because although it may not be austerity, it will still feel like it for many of us, because she's asking us to be patient. And that's not something we're very good at these days. I mean, if my Amazon parcel doesn't come the next day, I'm not buying it. If I have to wait 2 days, we're not very good at waiting. Is she banking on us being patient? Because a lot of this stuff won't be delivered before the end of this Parliament.
Well, you're absolutely right. And if you look at the housing side, it's 10 years.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the spending, which will happen supposedly in the short to medium term, in the energy area. So, for example, in nuclear for Sellafield C, which is the announcement that has been made of 14 billion that will be spent over the next 4 years. Well, that will only be spent if there is some private investment coming in, and to finish a new nuclear power station, plus all the little ones that they have, the modular ones that they have announced as well are going to be happening. Those take ages, as we've seen with Hinkley Point, where it's
already late, isn't it, by 5 years? Yeah.
Not only late by 5 years, but in terms of the cost, I think the original estimate was 17 billion. The final estimate is, or should be, because of course we haven't seen the end yet. The estimate at present is that by the time it's finished, it will cost about 46 billion. So we really are talking about, a lot of uncertainty ahead in terms of the figures that were announced today, and some of those benefits, indeed, if they come, will take some time, as you rightly said, and others may actually not really be benefits at all, because it's going to cost us an awful lot more and we need to borrow that money, possibly.
We're so bad at these infrastructure projects, aren't we? Why are we so bad at them? Is there, I mean, I tend to think of it as if there's a restaurant and they know there's a wedding coming, they'll pile on extra costs because it's a wedding. Do people do that when they see a government contract? Because if you were budgeting for yourself for 17 billion to 46 billion, that's a heck of a jump, right? You would never let that happen if you were building an extension of that value. So how come we always let that happen in government contracts?
Can I say it's also the case with HS2, where the cost of course have increased.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why the sort of second leg, if you like, has been for the moment abandoned anyway. Now, of course, we're talking about a Northern Powerhouse transport infrastructure spending. So let's see whether it replaces a little bit of what would have been spent there anyway. So that's an interesting one. We're going to hear a lot more about that in the next few weeks, as I understand it. But the interesting thing is that the public procurement process is not a particularly good one. And I remember when I was working for the government, we did a review of procurement capabilities across lots of departments and decided that they weren't really up to scratch and we need to do something about it. We saw some improvement taking place. But what tends to happen, like with, for example, HS2, is that we over-engineer it, or rather we over-design it, we over-engineer it, instead of taking something which has been tried and tested somewhere else, which is, for example, what was going on in France with the high-speed rail links they have. We decided to have a faster train service, which requires different types of tracks to be on it, which requires different types of platforms for this to come into, which then requires Euston to be re-engineered, which then requires new tunnels to be built or dug up, if you like. So you end up with this enormous cost. So we need to be cleverer. And what I think hopefully will happen, for example, with Sizewell C, is that we're going to take what has happened with, especially the second reactor in Hinkley C, point C, and then take that and basically imitate that, copy it for Sizewell C. If that were to happen, if we were a little bit cleverer about this and didn't try and reinvent the wheel each time, we might actually be able to do things a lot more cheaply.
Yeah, we also need hundreds of consultants, don't we, whenever we do anything. The other thing is, though, just talking about nuclear, just to cover that off, these smaller hubs that they're talking about as well, they've not been built anywhere else. So are we taking a risk with public money with that?
But there have been some that have been built, but I think we're talking about slightly smaller, easier to build and also faster. But the worry that you'd have is, why do we need them? A lot of that is because we're going to need a lot more energy in the future. Why will we need a lot more energy in the future? We're going to need it because we're going to have all these big data centers, because everything we do now, even me connecting with you today, uses huge amount of energy. A lot more than the way we used to do things before. You talked about, your parcel coming and you really, you're not going to just hang around waiting for this. These things happen automatically, more or less, or they may get cut off at any moment now. But we need to supply all those data centers and everything else that happens with AI. If you do a chat GPT inquiry, it's hugely energy inefficient. And yet we do it all the time and we do a lot more of it. So there is the question of, are we basically just making life much harder for us all because we need to build all these things to satisfy that type of demand? And do we need to be a little bit cleverer? Maybe there will be some technology change that will allow us to have all these things and not consume or require so much energy. Who knows?
Let's take a look at defence spending, because we know that much of this, as I said, has already been out. This is what they do now, which makes the statements incredibly boring, because we've heard it all before. But so defence is going to get more money, not as much as some people say we should get, that they should get in defence. Have the public been convinced enough that this defence spending is going to be important going forward?
Well, it's interesting you're saying that, because, of course, there have been opinion polls and people are not very keen on money being spent on defence rather than something else. Yeah. Because, of course, when you spend it on defence, you then use that and you destroy whatever you produce, I presume, if there is a war. And it's not exactly contributing hugely to the economy. But there are counter arguments that say that actually defence is, or the Ministry of Defence is like an economics department, because a lot of what it does to even produce whatever it's going to be producing will require a lot of technology, so you use lots of different sectors, and there are trickle-down effects because you can all become a little bit more innovative in loads of other industries. And of course, it uses quite a lot of people, and that, therefore, because of the supply chains, etc., contributes quite significantly to the economy, perhaps. But again, if you ask people, they say, we'd much rather spend it on schools or possibly on welfare or all the things that people absolutely need, including maybe reducing energy bills a little bit faster than has been the case. So because, of course, recently they've gone up, although they're coming down soon as of July the 1st. But nevertheless, people would have preferred to see things being spent in different areas of the economy. It doesn't mean that one isn't worried about defense. In any case, as you rightly said, the amount isn't huge. A lot of what needs to happen is for, as we heard, in fact, from a number of spokespeople today, the kit that's there needs to be replaced. So it's not as if we're doing some new things, submarines and all that sort of stuff. But in reality, a lot of it is just to make sure that what we've got, which is substandard, is a little bit more sort of up to speed with what we actually need.
Yeah.
So that's basically where we are.
How's your Russian, Vicky? Is it any good?
I can read it because, of course, I'm Greek and
I knew you would
practically at the same time.
I knew you'd be able to. What about the NHS? Okay, so this is the biggest benefactor really in this spending review. 3% a year. That amounts to around £29 billion. But that digging into that isn't going into infrastructure or any of the things that actually the NHS is really suffering from.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's day-to-day spending. And you're quite right. It is that amount per year over the next 3 years, which, you would think is actually quite a lot. And 3% is quite a lot. And I think, as you rightly said earlier, some of it may be eaten up in terms of higher wages, which, we don't begrudge because, of course, we did have strikes which weren't particularly productive for the rest of us because, of course, the queues became longer in terms of seeing anyone at the NHS. And there are indeed targets to be met, which the public approves of. So the waiting lists come down a little bit. So that's useful. But this is just the budget for day to day. As we said, that budget, the way that this fiscal rule works, has to be funded from taxation rather than borrowing. There is infrastructure spending. There are bits, for example, scanners or anything else, which you could suggest could fall under infrastructure, by which I mean capital spending, rather than it being day-to-day running spending. And I think there could therefore be all sorts of ways in which you can add to what is likely to be spent that way. But having said that, the 3% per annum is quite large. I mean, there was already quite an increase in the first 2 years, as I explained it before.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months, if you like, or 8 months of this government, then the year that we're in now in terms of the fiscal year. And then from then on, you have this extra spending. But if you have 3% for the NHS, although, as we know, I think the Lib Dem said this is all NHS and not much on social care, so that would be an interesting one to worry about. But then it means that loads of other government departments have cuts, which we're seeing. Yes, the police get something reasonable above inflation, possibly, or just about. But if you look at the rest of the Home Office, it doesn't. There's a fall there. There is a fall in in the spending by the Culture Department. There's a fall in what is spent by DEFRA, which is the environmental department. If you take out some of the capital spending, even for the energy department, you have a reduction in that as well. If you look at the Foreign Office, there is a cut there too, and just
quite a big one actually, isn't it? 6.3%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Indeed, and the interesting thing is that even in defence, the increase that they're getting, a lot of it comes from reducing the money that is being spent on development money, so foreign aid. So it's just being transferred to defence. So we're losing out that way as well, particularly in terms of soft power and whatever perhaps indirect benefits we might be getting by supporting most of the countries that actually need it.
Vicky, a big question that's being asked is about the autumn statement, the autumn budget. a lot of people are looking at this and saying it can't be done without raising. The IFS, in fact, has said, look, there's going to have to be some quite large tax rises to pay for this. Rachel Reeves, though, is saying she's staunchly sticking to the no VAT, no national insurance, no income tax. Where's she going to get the money from?
It's a very good question. Now, the question is how much money? If there is any revision in growth, perhaps if the environment improves in terms of tariffs, because of course, there's been all these concerns about what will happen to the world economy, our trade and so on. If President Trump sort of gives in, he's already giving in a little bit on China, as we know, the discussions have just been taking place in London in the last couple of days. And it looks like something may be moving there. If indeed we manage to maintain the low tariff agreements we've struck, but of course they haven't been implemented yet, but let's see what happens. There could be a possibility, particularly if confidence improves, that there is going to be all the spending being done. We might have faster growth forecast by the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, which produces this forecast at the time of the budget. So we're going to see one of those come up at that time. If that is the case, then maybe the 5 billion in particular that the Chancellor needs, because obviously the reversal of the winter fuel allowance cut, the reversal of that, plus if there is anything at all, any movement, which people expect there will be, to placate particularly the backbenchers in the Labour Party, in the 2-child benefit cap, or anything else that may happen, maybe easing some of the welfare cuts that were announced before for people particularly with disabilities. So if indeed growth is faster over the period, if the OBR thinks that, then they can find it. And I think that was something very similar said by Ed Miliband the other day. But if not, then I'm afraid we are going to have to see some increases in taxes. The sums aren't huge if things stay as they are. So we may see, again, the pledges being kept, but other things happening, whether it is on a little bit more on pensions, or maybe some type of wealth tax, or some tinkering that may happen. But I think if there is pressure and that pressure continues, I think some reversal also of the pledges may have to take place.
Yeah, I can imagine they're walking around with their fingers crossed now for the next few months, sleeping with them crossed as well. Vicky, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Vicky Price, Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed, and this is Petrie. And just to let you know, we're giving you the chance to win FIFA Club World Cup final tickets. That's surprisingly difficult to say. Thanks to our friends at DAZN, here is everything that you need to know.
Hello! Look who it is, it's me, Andy Goldstein. And here at TalkSport, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We're going to sort out the flights, we're going to sort out the accommodation, and we're going to give you £5 spending money to spend however you want. How about that?
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, all you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338. Do that by the 13th of June at 11 p.m, and that's it, you're done, you're in the draw. A text will cost £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have bill payer's permission, or you can just send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, and it must arrive by 5 p.m. on the 18th of June.
This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
So don't miss out on this incredible giveaway, thanks to our friends over at DAZN, and the very best of luck to you. Right, coming up at midnight, of course, it is the hour-long phone-in. It is just you and me. There's no guests, there's nothing else there. So it's a chance for you to have your say. It's a chance for you to talk back. And I want to know what you make of this spending review. Look, I know it can be really as dull as ditch, but this is your money. This is our money that they're spending. So I think we ought to really have a say in as to how it's spent, don't you? So do you think that she has the right priorities? Do you think that, you know, giving 29 billion extra a year, that's on top of another 20 odd billion I think we gave them just a few months ago, you know, is it worth it? I mean, I thought, do you know what I thought? I thought the whole point was that they were going to do a big deep dive into the NHS and find out where all the wasted money was, and find out, I thought that they were going to do a big review. They're probably still doing it, aren't they, at the cost of millions of pounds. I just don't see the point in throwing, as my mother used to say, good money after bad. I mean, is this really going to do anything? Is it what hole is it going to plug? It's just I mean, talk about living in a black hole, which we will be talking about in a little bit with Andy Lound. That's what the NHS is to me. It's just extraordinary. So, do you think she's got her priorities right in the spending review? Listen, we didn't hear much in the way of detail, except that they were going to try and cut back on the migrants being in hotels. Well, the only way you're going to do that is to cut back on the number of boats that come across, and at the moment they're just going to smash the gangs, which isn't working at all. So I don't know, do you think that we're just wasting money? Is there just a lot of, I mean, there is a lot of waste, but what can we do about it? I suppose we can at least let them know. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you straight back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie with you. Just to let you know that coming up after the next break, it will be Andy Lowndes who's going to be talking us through whether we're living in a black hole or not. Very interesting. First, though, let's speak to Ria Freeman, who is author and PR and social media expert. I bet Keir Starmer wishes he was in a black hole at the moment. I mean, this is a real snub, isn't it? I love Madame Tussauds for this. Madame Tussauds have said that they won't be making a waxwork of Keir Starmer because you have to be popular and relevant with the public for 5 to 10 years. And they don't think he will be. But they are doing a waxwork of a Greggs sausage roll, which is a lot less wax, I would imagine, but still.
Yeah, I think being upstaged by a sausage roll is probably going to be a low for most people.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I would think that.
Yeah.
And we have to sort of say as well that the sausage roll, I think, is only in the exhibition for, a month. But it is alongside sort of William Shakespeare and David Attenborough. And I think from a PR point of view for Greggs, I mean, I think it's incredible to have anything that you create be seen as that level of sort of icon. It's such a thing that's attached to British culture. You would possibly think that a Prime Minister would score higher on a kind of ranking than a sausage roll, but obviously not.
Well, obviously, I mean, I did think, well, he's pretty much a waxwork himself, so we don't need two. I mean, there's not much, and it takes a year to make one of these models. And who knows? Look, how many prime ministers have we been through? I mean, poor Madame Tussauds would have been melting more than they were building, wouldn't they? All the PMs that we've had. Liz Truss, what was it, less than 40 days or something? So I mean, that wouldn't have. I can see why they're reticent to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last one they did was actually Boris Johnson, who, whether you love him, loathe him, or anything in between, he was very much part of everyone's lives for a while. And I think he's hard to forget for various reasons. But as you say, after that point, actually, we move through prime ministers quite quickly. And if it takes a year to create them, they do have to be relevant for, I think, as you said, 5 to 10 years. That's what they're looking for in these exhibitions. Yeah, I mean, I don't know at what point they'd have got to Liz Truss's creation by the time she moved on.
Well, it could have just been a lettuce, of course. That would have been a lot quicker. But I mean, it's just a little ouch, isn't it? When you've got Madame Tussauds saying, we just don't think you're going to be relevant in 5 to 10 years, Keir. We don't think anything you do is going to make you relevant in the next 5 to 10 years.
It's a bit of a kicker, definitely.
Yeah, definitely a bit of an ouch. I think I would have been a bit. Yeah, wounded, wounded by that. Mind you, they haven't rushed to my door to do one of me either. So
not yet.
not yet. Greta Thunberg denounces Gaza war crimes. Did this do her any good? Because actually there's a lot of stories around saying that the Israelis wanted her to sit down and watch what happened when was it November 7th? I can't remember the date. But anyway, and she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't sit and watch what happened to those Israelis on the border when Hamas came across and kidnapped and murdered so many. So has she done herself any favours on this?
You can argue both ways on this. From terms of kind of the brand of Greta, absolutely, because she's back in the public eye again. Lots of people are talking about her. And I think when anyone makes the news, they also bring up more historical facts. So it's kind of framed and in context. So for brand Greta as a whole, absolutely. But in terms of the minutiae, I think Israel saw it as just a publicity stunt. From that as well, Donald Trump's come out and given his opinion on her, which she's kind of come back with, which has possibly been something that has earned her more favours than what she did.
Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one. I think it just depends on the angle you view it, how you view her. But in terms of her brand, she's out there again. She's in the public eye. In terms of her comeback to Donald Trump, yeah, I think she probably has done all right from that point of view.
Yeah, I just wonder how she would feel about those images of her in an airplane. because that's not a good picture for the future, is it?
No, and this is the thing. There's so many levels to what she does and how she does it. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and I think it'll be interesting to see when she sort of comes up again, and in what way that is as well, to see how she's going to kind of develop that. She's always going to have huge amounts of criticism, but she obviously has got that support as well.
It's an interesting one, though, isn't it, Rhea? Because she is the story, not Gaza, not the blockade of aid. She went there on a boat to take aid into Gaza, but that isn't the story. And so if it's just Greta Thunberg, what does she want? Does she want Gaza to be the story, or does she want herself to be the story? And if she wanted Gaza to be the story, she's blown it.
Yeah, no, I think it's very much the story is about her.
Yeah.
And if you read about what she said and how she feels she was helping, if that's, let's assume it's all genuine and true and correct, I can see where she's coming from. But as you say quite rightly, the focus has moved far away from Gaza and actually the actions that she took and then what happened to her. And it is all about her now rather than the cause, which was why she was meant to be doing everything in the first place.
Yeah, so in my view, it's backfired on her enormously, as it did with Twix. Explain to me what happened with Twix.
So Twix put out an advert, and I've watched this advert. It's weird. It's a weird advert, in my opinion. But it got 5 complaints to the ASA, and now it's been banned because it was said to encourage dangerous driving. It's a strange advert. So it's kind of a car chase. The man does some kind of, I don't know, handbrake turn or something, rolls off a cliff and lands upside down on another caramel-coloured car. And then it talks about how it's not 2's better than 1, but something like that. And then they drive off with one car on top of the other. I don't feel it necessarily warranted
banning. No. I mean, how does that encourage bad driving? Oh, I know. I've seen Twix advert. I'll drive off a cliff.
Yeah, with my
stupid
bar rotating around the car.
Yeah, that's just dumb. People honestly really annoy me these days. They really do. Mind you, there was that advert for fast food. I can't remember whether it was for chicken. KFC, it was KFC. Thank you, Sam. For KFC, where they dipped a man into. Did you see this?
No.
I've urged Kentucky Fried Chicken. Go and have a look at this advert. They had all these people running through a jungle, and then eventually they end up at this sort of lake of food stuff, and they get this man they capture this man, and then they just tip him upside down and they dip him in this. I mean, to me, it was saying our chicken's made of human beings. It was just
no one really wants.
Nobody wants that image. Nobody. But I have a look at that because that was weird. That was like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me, but I don't want to eat human chicken. I don't know whether it was a reflection on, we shouldn't be killing as many chickens, but I can't see why KFC would be saying that. It was just odd. Have a look at that. But Twix have had to pull this advert now because of 5 complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's crazy when you realise what people complain about. The world we live in today and the stuff going on. And I think Britain's Got Talent. I think Amanda Holden's dress got complained about. We've got Twix adverts being complained about. I feel there are bigger issues out there than... I mean, I love a Twix bar, but I feel there are bigger issues out there.
I tell you, I can't even say what I'd say to them to the face because I would be off-commed. I would lose my job. But I'm so angry about it, so annoyed about it. Elon v. Trump. This died out because I was really enjoying that back and forth that was going on last Thursday, I think it was, about the big falling out of these two egos.
It was quite bizarre viewing, I think.
Doing it so publicly is so pathetic anyway.
So publicly and so... It was almost like watching a kind of playground scene unfold, but obviously with 2 of the most powerful men in the world.
But why do they have to put it out? I mean, they've both got these platforms that they own. But have your argument behind closed doors. I don't understand it.
It just, if it was two people that weren't, you know, Elon Musk and the president, you would just go, oh my gosh, you're being wildly unprofessional, stop it.
Yeah.
But obviously, because of who they are, it kind of played out. And now it's taken another turn with Elon, I say tweeting, it's not tweeting, but Xing just sounds wrong to me and always
does. It will always, it's always going to be tweeting to me. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah.
Sort of apologising and saying, well, I regret some of my posts about Donald Trump last week. They went too far. So
he didn't say which ones, but I'm suggesting it might have been the Epstein one.
There were some very wild ones floating about last week, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
But it has actually bumped Tesla's share price up. Him saying this.
Him apologising. But
yeah.
I mean, also, he might be worried about losing his government contracts. And I don't trust a word either of these men say, to be honest. And I think LA is a distraction for Donald Trump as to the Epstein files and other things that are going on in Washington. That's my take on it as well, because it's all too convenient, really. But still not releasing the Epstein files. That's going to come back and bite Trump, isn't it? As far as PR goes, he said he was going to do it.
I think there's quite a few things that could potentially come back and bite Donald Trump from a PR point of view, and perhaps that is an addition to that list.
Yeah. I just want to see them. Mind you, I think I know what's on them, so I don't need to see them, but as a journalist, I'd like to. Ria, it's fabulous to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ria Freeman there, author and PR and social media expert. A quick break, back to Head to the Stars next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Talk. And you know, when I read this story, I thought, I wish I was talking to Andy Lound. And then I come in and I'm talking to Andy Lound. Andrew Lound, our space expert. Andy, you look fabulous. Look at you. Where are you?
Thank you very much. Another piece of clothing just for you.
It's fabulous. Are you on the edge of a black hole?
Yes, it's a black hole behind me. Yes,
yes, there you go.
I'm just outside the event horizon, so I'm just about safe at the moment.
You won't get sucked in while we're chatting.
Not really.
Not
no.
really.
Hopefully not. Anyway.
Hope not. This fascinating. I don't understand black holes. I don't. You're going to have to idiot explain to me, but. The James Webb Telescope discovery might just blow everything we know out of space. Are we in a black hole?
It's an interesting concept, this, because the James Webb Telescope's been looking at galaxies, very distant galaxies, and all galaxies rotate. And the interesting thing they've noticed is that 2/3 of galaxies rotate in the same direction. In theory, with the formation of the universe, it should be a 50-50 split, clockwise and anti-clockwise rotation, but it isn't. And you have to try and explain why that is the case. The reason could be, and they said it would make sense, if when the universe began, it was spinning already. So we ended up with the spin. The question is, where did the spin come from? And when they tried to analyse the effects, the suggestion came through. It's an old idea, actually. It's not a new one. Is the fact that the universe that we're in could actually be in a black hole in another universe. So a black hole in another universe. Now, what happens with black holes? A star collapses, a massive star collapses. Now, because there is so much mass collapsing in on it, gravity increases. When gravity increases, it sucks in more material falls into it, the mass increases again, to such a point that to escape that black hole, that object, you would have to exceed the speed of light. And therefore light cannot escape from it. Therefore, by definition, it becomes a black hole. So a black hole is essentially an incredibly dense area of gravity. So that's what happens. Everything falls into it. The laws of physics are very bizarre regarding black holes as to how they behave. And anyone who watches the film Interstellar, you'll get a very good guide as to how black holes actually operate. Quite fascinating imagery. Now, the suggestion has been is what happens when all this material falls into the black hole. You know, what actually happens to it in the end? We simply don't know. The laws of physics may be completely different to what we imagine. However, if we look at our universe, the way the universe is operating, the way everything is expanding and spreading outwards, and the way the galaxies are actually spinning, and we have this really interesting homogeneous sort of way the universe operates, and the way that we have time operates from the past, steps by step forward. Now, how we have to explain why that is the case. And they've looked at, suppose that when material collapses down into a black hole, it gets condensed and condensed and condensed to a ridiculous figures that we can't imagine, but there's a vast amount of it. And the suggestion has been put forward that what happens is, as this material comes together, eventually, instead of just constantly crushing down on itself, which it can't do, there must be something to happen, it rebounds and explodes outwards in one direction, which is the formation of our universe. So what you have is, you almost have it all crushing down, then rebounding and exploding outwards, forming a new universe within the black hole itself. Now, the event horizon, which is where if you cross the event horizon, you fall in, nothing can escape out of the event horizon. To us, in our universe, if we look far, far back, that is the horizon of the observable universe, because we can't see beyond that. And we're actually reaching that point now with the Webb telescope. So that would actually explain why we have this horizon which we can never see beyond, because that is, on the other side of the black hole, the event horizon in our parent universe. But it also means that the black holes in our universe could actually be forming universes in their own way, their own universes. So we would have multi-universes in the whole cosmos itself. And the upshot of this is, of course, it means we will never have the answer to what the beginning of everything was. It would be not possible to do so.
So it's like if you did a magnification of a sponge, if you like.
Yeah.
So and all of those holes are black holes within.
Yeah,
within a black hole potentially.
Yes, yes.
And that black hole again could be like the sponge within other black holes.
That's correct. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yes. So you'd have this incredible, infinitely. The cosmos would be far more bizarre than we could ever imagine, and we will never ever find the answer to it, because there would not be enough time in the cosmos to actually find out we could never cross into the parent universe anyway. It would not be possible to do that.
So you can't ever leave a black hole once you're in a black hole?
No, you can't. We could never cross
Right.
over into it. So we're stuck where we are. So there's nothing much we could do about it. Having said that, after this wonderful description they've done, this great, wonderful thing, they also pointed out, I love this, at the end of this great article from you, pointing out, actually, however, there is some controversy over doing the calculations for the spinning of galaxies, and it could simply be we have to recalibrate the equipment.
That's boring. That's not
as exciting, is it? Really?
It's not as exciting, because I still I understand because energy has to go somewhere, right? So if it's crushing in on itself and that energy is still present, then it has to explode, right? Because there's nowhere else for it to go, so except for outward. I understand that. What I still can't understand is infinity.
Yeah.
The idea that something goes on forever. And if it, and where does forever end, and how can it not end?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the thing that people have difficulty with is where does space end? Space can't end.
It can't end.
It's absolutely nothing. It's absolute zero, nothingness. And we
can't understand nothing either.
No, we can't. You can't. See, the interesting thing about this theory is that when you get this rebound of everything being compressed, the result of that will be the formation of all the atomic structures that we would see. So it actually, mathematically and physics-wise, makes a lot of sense. And that would be quite incredible, because we would have a very interesting answer to what happened before the Big Bang. And now we know there's possibly, if we are in a black hole, I mean, I'm in Birmingham. We are in a black hole in Birmingham. It's called a dustbin bag. Okay,
and I know. I'm sorry about that.
So we're in it anyway. But it is interesting to think that, yes, that would actually solve some issues that we have on our mind as what came before the Big Bang. But wait a minute, that becomes the case that we're in another universe. We're actually floating within another universe. However, here becomes the big noodle. Is that universe that we were born from itself in a black hole?
Yeah.
And is it itself in a black hole, as you said with your sponge? And if that's the case, what was the origin of everything?
Exactly.
And we just never... I think the sad thing is we're never going to know the answer to that. If this is true, I mean, it's still a theory. It's still a hypothesis, not a theory. It's a hypothesis. If it's still... But it does turn out to be true, we will have to accept that we will never
find out.
Know the answer to it, and that I find fascinating.
I've got a question for you, which is really stupid, right? It was part of something I was watching that was supposed to be a joke, but I did think, oh, hang on, you know how fire needs oxygen?
Yes.
To burn.
Yes.
And there's no oxygen in space.
Yes.
How does the sun keep burning?
The sun is a nuclear reactor, so what you have is it's not burning in the sense of a match. It's actually a nuclear reaction that you're seeing. It's a nuclear fusion reaction.
There are flames, right? And why aren't they immediately being extinguished?
No, they're not flames. These are filaments of energy that come off the sun itself. It's not actually burning flames. They have the appearance of burning.
Oh, right, okay.
And in early science fiction, they tended to use flames to represent that, but it's actually filaments of energy and magnetic fields coming off the sun.
And in that case, they don't need it.
In the sun,
I told you it was a stupid question, but...
No, it's not a stupid question. You need to answer it. Two hydrogen atoms fuse together, and when they fuse together, they form helium, and that causes the energy. And that's the reaction they're trying to create, and this government is now funding an awful lot of money for nuclear fusion reactors, because that's the reaction they want to actually create on Earth for energy, because it's how nature generates energy.
Well, I'm glad you told me that. I'm happy with that, because that was one of those annoying itches that I had. Let's have a look at what's going on with Trump and Musk. There was some question about whether Musk was going to cancel his rockets, but he's not doing that anymore. But cancelling SpaceX contracts could also create a problem. We don't know what's going on with those two. It's
strange. NASA are the only one. I mean, Newsweek asked the questions, and NASA simply, they were referred to NASA by the White House, who simply said, we will continue on our present course with our contractors and with our partners. In other words, we're carrying on as normal. Yeah. Because there's a lot of issues. I mean, I studied American politics many, many years ago, and I found it quite fascinating. And I think you hit it right with your last guest, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, what you're seeing here, Trump doing, and Musk, their argument, is nothing unusual. What is unusual is we all can see it.
Yeah.
It usually happens behind closed doors and nobody ever sees it. We had frank discussions, is what they usually say, which means they had a blazing row.
Yeah.
And the fact we're seeing it, I think, is slightly undignified. I would put the word undignified about it, but there's nothing unusual. And they will probably kiss and make up, because what's he going to do? Go to the Russians, which has been the suggestion, ask them to take astronauts to the space station? Of course not. That's not going to happen. Is he going to go to China to do it? No, of course he's not. China's
So he's going to have to back down, basically.
Well, no, they will come to a mutual compromise and agreement, and I think that would be the sensible thing to do. But this is the kind of nonsense that scientists and engineers hate to get mixed up in, is the politics, because when the politicians hold the purse strings for these projects, you really have serious problems.
Yeah, and look, there may be some questions raised now with SpaceX in terms of putting all that power into one man's hands. And if I were Donald Trump, I'd be going, hang on a minute, I've just fallen out with him. We might kiss and make up, but if he's got all of our infrastructure, in SpaceX, then, like the FAA and all of that, that we can't be doing that.
No, but they are going to Bezos as well, of course, for Blue Origin and Blue Glenn. Blue Glenn, of course, has been delayed for its next test flight, which is a bit of concern. So to be quite honest, and with the NASA program, the NASA launch system, which is completely behind the times, way over budget, is not going to work. To be quite honest, I think Trump is stuck with SpaceX, because to be honest, they're really the only kids on the block.
Yeah, well, that's always where the worry is, isn't it? Andy, lovely to talk to you. Thank you for scratching my itch, so to speak. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, coming up, we are going to be looking through Thursday's newspapers, and Amy Fischer will be here in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good to have your company, and with me in the studio now is former Director of Communications for the Conservative Party, Amy Fischer. Amy, it's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Nice to be here.
Before we get to the papers, a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. Not good PR for Keir Starmer that Madame Tussauds would rather put a sausage roll in their display than the Prime Minister. How would you have handled that?
Madame Tussauds can really be quite on the nose.
It was
particularly when they
hurtful.
sort of like melt down people's wax statues.
I know.
That's when you really know that
It's
you're
over.
not, that it's over. Like you've been literally melted down into a wax
puddle.
A wax puddle. So look, if I was Keir Starmer, you really have to take that one on the chin, right? And you just
I'd
sort of,
have him with having a photograph taken eating a Greggs sausage roll.
I
That's
was
what I
going to
would.
say going and standing next to it, but then as we know, Keir Starmer is actually quite small, so then there'd be the sort of embarrassing size. Because everybody, this was the thing that everyone forgets, because Rishi, I mean, he wasn't that. Rishi was like sort of 5'6". I mean, it's not teeny tiny, but because he was much smaller than a lot of people around him, people do forget that Keir Starmer is a very broadly, averagely, he's not sort of giant, but kind of did get away with looking bigger than Rishi most of the time. And now that Rishi's not there, people are suddenly like, oh,
he's quite short, isn't
yes.
he? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have. I think the major problem that Madame Tussauds had really was that he's already a waxwork. I mean, that it would be difficult to to make a waxwork as waxy as the waxwork we already have.
I think that's maybe a bit unfair, but I'm going to admit that I actually went to Madame Tussauds as an adult about 2 years ago.
Did you?
I just took myself off for the afternoon because I realised it had been about 30 years since I'd been there, and I had a delightful time, and I genuinely, the strangest person I found it like standing next to, because obviously the whole point is these are they are very lifelike, some of them, and the strangest person I did find standing next to was actually Tom Cruise, because it was so like, that megawatt smile and the Tom Cruise tuxedo. It really, I know he's Diddy, but it really did feel as though he was about to go, Amy, and it was just unnerving as I was standing there going, oh, it's a friend I was with, oh, can you take a photo of me? And I just got a bit creeped out by it.
Yeah, last time I went to Madame Tussauds, I'd been invited to some corporate party that they had there, and they had it in the big hall where they've just got the waxwork dotted around, so you can walk up to them and have your photograph
where the
taken.
Royals have, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
There is
so
a big
sort of,
hall,
it's like in a big hall, and I was sitting there getting plastered because it was free alcohol.
That must have become quite confusing at some point. Hello,
It did.
do I know you?
No,
you're a waxwork.
It was even worse because you'd be standing there talking to somebody, to an actual person, but feeling somebody looking at you, and I was like, "Who's that looking at me?" Stop
this is
staring.
exactly the sensation I'm talking about, though, with Tom Cruise, where it does actually start to feel like, I do actually feel as though this is. I know it's not real.
I wouldn't want to spend the night there on my own.
No,
I'd be creeped out.
I'm fairly certain there've been horror movies made about that, in fact.
Yeah, I'm sure. But no, it was just that I kept thinking people were staring at me, and I didn't have glasses in those days, so I was also pickled and partially not sighted, and absolutely convinced that Cher or somebody was trying to start a fight with me.
Yeah.
She wasn't. She was just a waxwork.
Is Cher the worst person you'd want to have a fight started
I don't know why,
with? That was quite a random recollection that you plucked.
I don't know why she particularly popped into my head there, but yeah, it was a very strange experience. But at least I haven't been usurped for a sausage roll.
No, that would be a dent to one's...
Or melted down. Mind you, I've not been built, but at least I'd rather not be built in the first place than be melted down
for
at
a
some
sausage
point.
roll. That would be a dent to one's morale, I feel.
It wouldn't be good. We've got to talk about the spending review because it will be all over the papers. But just in terms of PR, in communications, the way they've communicated what they're spending the money on and why they're spending it, do you think they've done a good job?
No. And twofold, actually. One is because I think so much of it is just so... almost shrug of the shoulders. So much of it, as we were just saying just before we came up, so much of it has been, leaked, trailed, whichever side of that particular coin you want to come down on. And then when the Chancellor was on her feet on the floor of the House this afternoon, she was reading off these, billion for this, 100 million here, there, whatever. This was a massive, great spending list in a way, and look, what a spending review is, it is what money is going to be spent on in departments in terms terms of day-to-day spending and capital projects. It's not the same as the budget when you get to kind of see how your household, what the tax is going to be on, tobacco or beer or whatever. So it's not that I think people are expecting that, but it was just this reel off of numbers which, oh look, no surprise, when you look below some of the headline figures that she wanted to get about the investment she was putting into places, they rather quickly fell apart, and the latter part of latter part of Wednesday's afternoon and into Thursday morning has been then people legitimately questioning, going, well, this is all great, you've given us a massive spending list when we know the economy isn't in great shape and has sort of veered around since sort of this time last year over the spring, and actually when you did a last budget, and hey ho, the one big thing that today you were wanting to make political gain from, this stopping spending on hotels for migrants. I mean, because that was their sort of biggie sort of rabbit out of the hat, because everything else had been trailed. As soon as you sort of dig down into that, by tea time news on Wednesday, well, it just sort of turns out that the government's just going to be building some other sort of accommodation which is going to cost money somehow from somewhere, from capital expenditure. So people have just gone, well, did you really think we weren't going to
ask how or where they're going to go?
See through that? And, again, in some of the sort of, because it always takes a few hours once any chancellor has made their spending review. It does take a few hours to delve beneath those headline figures, and the most interesting bits are always at the back of the publication when you do get some of the nitty-gritty. And then, it was even John McDonnell, former Labour Chancellor under Jeremy Corbyn, who Wednesday afternoon was out and about saying, I'm pleased to see that she is doing spending, but she also lacks entire political strategy.
Yeah.
Now, if John McDonnell is saying that, as a former Labour shadow chancellor himself is saying that about the now actual Labour chancellor, I mean, I'm not sure Ms Reeves is much in a happy position about where this has necessarily landed, because that's from her own quote side. That's not me as a conservative person saying it. That's literally what a colleague is saying. So I think it was sort of has managed to simultaneously be both boring and exactly what was expected, but then the one thing that she expected to be, as I've said, the rabbit out of the hat, the paying for migrant accommodation, has fallen disaster. It's not even just fallen flat, it's just a nonsense, because it's been seen
it does make a mockery.
Quickly. It doesn't make any sense. What did you expect people to take away from this?
That was a reform policy. A lot of people said, look, all she did was mention reform. It seems that this is a knee-jerk, this spending review is really a knee-jerk to what reform said that they would likely do, which is never a good look either, because it just means that she hasn't got any of her own ideas. But the other thing that is troubling me is the vital spend, the situation we find ourselves in, where we have to spend more on defence. Both she and Keir and the Defence Secretary have failed. They have failed miserably in telling the story as to why this needs to happen. You ask anybody about this extra spend on defence, they go, yeah, well, why are they spending it on defence when we've got X, Y, Z? And you can see why they think that. In peacetime, it seems to be nonsense. But there is a real reason we need to be doing that right now, and they have not explained it at all.
Not at all. And it's even a little bit more disingenuous than that, because of what the Chancellor did in the spending review on Wednesday was she elided into it the whole sort of budget for intelligence services as well. So just sort of by meshing a few things together, did exactly what you said, which is neither make the political, moral and strategic case for the defence spending in and of itself, but then also muddied the figures even further by rolling into an intelligence budget in a way that, as I say, it's disingenuous at best. It's sort of, I would personally argue, sort of downright misleading on that front. And I don't understand it about the defence budget, right? Because as I just said, there are specific I don't think anyone believes that Keir Starmer and his government are some kind of war crazy, desperate to wage geopolitical fights across the globe. So the point is, they're not warmongering, but explain your reasons why the country is in the situation it if then people don't agree with it, that's a separate issue. But sort of trying to half-heartedly do it and then somewhat underhandedly boost a budget by including the intelligence services, as I've said, you've ended up, once again, it's become a leitmotif of this government that they can't quite pick their way clearly through anything. It's always a kind of mishmash of half-heartedness and then reversals and then reverse ferrets and a plaster over a self-inflicted wound that you sort of then just end up thinking, you kind of again got yourself into this own mire, which you actually didn't need to be.
I mean, I keep saying it, they just keep punching themselves in the face. I mean, putting it bluntly. But even earlier on this week, when they had to U-turn on the winter fuel, which we all knew.
Which U-turn was this?
The
U-turn on a U-turn, which was a U-turn on the fact they're not doing it. So we're at least in a third or fourth reversal of 180s.
And then saying, we were able to do this because the economy's doing so much better. A day later, of course, we get the jobless figures and we get the unemployment
highs for like
figures.
5 years.
Exactly,
yeah.
And the economy isn't doing better. So they just come off as just lying.
No, but I think we're in some sort of almost sci-fi world because the statistic, because obviously it's spending review, so everyone is flinging around statistics left, right and centre, and at a certain point I personally am just getting very confused. But one of the top line ones, which I have noticed the government has been using over the last couple of days, is fastest growing economy in the G7. Now, they've just started using that again in the last couple of days because a year ago, when they won the general election, the country was the fastest going in the G7. It hasn't been for the last 12 months since they've had their first year of power, and it's only in the last 3 days that it's reverted to the position it was a year ago. So we're like in this bizarre world where they're sort of, renewal was the word that the Chancellor, used so many times at the top of her statement, and you're sort of like, well, what sort of renewal are we meant to be in? The kind of year that almost by your own admission you've just wasted.
It just hasn't happened.
It just hasn't happened because we've somehow, lost the actual 12 months. That you had your first year, your first fifth of the parliamentary term for which you've been elected, and you yourself seem to want that just to be not something of which we speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it didn't happen, although it did happen. If you were in charge of comms, would you have had Rachel Reeves apologise? Or at least say, look, we've listened to you, we've heard you, and we've decided to reverse this because we do listen to the country. But to say nothing except, well, we can afford it now, is blatantly a lie. And it just feels like the word you've used, disingenuous.
I think I would have gone for a straight apology because I think we're in a time in political communications. So maybe 15, 20 years ago, there would be the whole we just don't do something, and it would be the Alistair Campbell, stick hard to your line, stick hard to your line, ram it down people's throats, keep repeating it, they'll end up believing it, that kind of thing. Things only become true when you're bored of repeating it to yourself as a politician, right? Yeah. So I think that was 20, 25 years ago. Then we did sort of move into a bit of a Cameroonian, age of austerity, when there was the whole I'm really sorry, but we have austerity. Yeah. We are really sorry that we as this coalition and then obviously, majority Conservative government are making these very difficult decisions. We are admitting they are difficult decisions and we have to make them because of X, Y and Z. So that was kind of the I'm sorry but period. I think we're now in just the I'm sorry period. People, I'm not saying people were stupid before, I'm just saying access to information is so much quicker now, and people see through sound bites in a way when all of these styles of political communication were pretty new and lines were pretty easy to hold, frankly. 25, 20 years ago, you could get all of your ministerial team to hold a line, and frankly, if they do say it enough times on the airwaves and people don't have access to sort of 24-hour Twitter, they get bored, and you've heard it sort of 3 times, they accept it. We're not there. So, of course, we're not there. It's passion time being what it is. So I think, I think, had I been advising Ms. Rees, I would have just said, can we just try this honesty thing?
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, at least people might be interested in the refreshingness of it.
I agree. I mean, this is the thing, is that just say, look,
they might still dislike it, but at least they might go, oh, well, hate what she's saying, or at least she hasn't tried to pull the wool over my eyes.
Yes, at least she hasn't tried to tell me that the economy is in such a strong position that we can reverse something that we brought in last year.
We brought in 8 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why. I just don't know why they think we're stupid. They must do.
But this is the thing, is that, whenever you look at, and it has ever been thus with spending, budgets, but particularly spending statements, when the figures get reeled off of investment here, there, the millions, whatever. And again, it's only sort of when you look behind their headlines or have time to digest it, you realise where they're talking about in real terms, defined terms. And again, the idea that people don't understand the difference between protecting spending and protecting it in real terms. The idea that people don't understand that, over a 3 or 4 year period, inflation will have an impact. It's just such a nonsense, and it's just frankly a bit insulting. And it's also sort of, no offence to economists, some of my very best friends, as the saying goes, but are you guys sitting in your ivory tower in the Treasury, composing these kind of statements and thinking, if we just do enough flimflammery of economic terms, and we're comparing this spending period with that spending period, and 3 years over here and 4 years over here, and inflationary and non-inflationary in real terms, that everyone's just going to sit back over their tea at 6 o'clock when the statement's finished and just go, oh, jolly good, I feel like there's going to be much more investment.
Yeah.
I mean, is that what they think people are going to do?
I don't know. I suspect they do. I suspect they do think we're all, furiously reading all the nitty-gritty and trying to figure it all out. I don't know. I think they've got to find a more interesting speakers. I mean, both she and Keir cannot. I mean, it's like listening to beige paint, isn't it?
If there was to be I think the one you might be groping for is turgid.
Turgid.
I think that's the sort of slightly sort of striding,
something beginning with a T.
Striding through,
very similar.
Striding through, porridge, metaphorical, linguistic porridge.
Something very, very similar. Let's take a break, Amy. We'll come back in a moment and have a look at the Washington Post.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and with me, Amy Fischer, and we're going through the papers. Quick look, first of all, at the Washington Post, just to see what's going on the other side of the pond. This is a really interesting story. I saw this a little bit earlier on. ramp up will see allies' citizens sent to Guantanamo, or Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. This is the Trump administration preparing to begin the transfer of potentially thousands of foreigners who are in the United States illegally to the US military base in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The foreign nationals under considerations hail from a range of countries. They include hundreds from friendly European nations, including Britain, Italy, France, Germany, Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Lithuania, Poland, Turkey and Ukraine, but also other parts of the world. And we're unlikely to be notified of our citizens being deported to Cuba.
Well, I mean, this is the direct quote. The administration, i.e. the US one, is unlikely to inform the foreigners' home governments about the impending transfers to the infamous military facility. Now, look, Guantanamo Bay is the place, in Cuba that one remembers as being set up after, 9/11, because it had this slightly shady jurisdictional.
That's right. They were able to carry out torture,
unextraordinary rendition, and this kind of stuff. And the whole reason why it was in Cuba, as I say, was because I was trying to politely find that. Well, politely words were a shady jurisdictional status, which is sort of. What is it, doubling down or alluded to in here by saying, the British government, the Italian government, the German government might not be notified if nationals from any of these, countries that are named in this front page piece on Thursday's Washington Post is sent off there. I mean, this is Kafkaesque. I mean, you can't have but this is what they're literally in black and white proposing.
Why not to put them back
exactly?
Because these will be people whose green cards have run out, or their visa may have run out, or they're waiting for a visa extension and it hasn't come through yet. These are not criminals in the sense of the word.
Well, even if they are, send them back. The same way as in Britain, we have long-standing, ongoing, highly publicised negotiations with, say, Albania about how many Albanian prisoners Britain wants to deport back to their home country. So whatever category of folk any of these might be in the US, anything from overstaying a visa right up the scale of potential involvement in organised crime, drug trafficking, people trafficking or terrorism offences. I mean, well, fine, send them back to Italy, Britain, Ireland, not to this grey, as I say, Kafkaesque. Goodness knows what goes on there, and has been a subject of extraordinary dispute and concern for 25, 30 years now?
Yeah. I mean, basically these citizens will be disappeared.
Yeah,
disappeared. They just will be disappeared.
But the US government is admitting they'll be disappeared. Yeah. It literally says in black and white that your country... You won't be notified. There'll be no opportunity to speak to your ambassadorial representative. Well, of course, because we don't have one in Cuba. But even before that happens,
no legal
they're upfrontly stating, well, yeah, we don't want you here, so we're sending you off to this place in Cuba that was set up for the very purpose of being a black box.
Yeah. The other thing that I heard today as well, that foreign nationals who are going to America to watch the football that's going on at the moment, that ICE and the FBI are going to be part of the policing of the stadiums where the football games are being played, and they're telling foreign nationals, they're being advised to take their papers with them. To take their passports, their hotel bookings, their length of stay, their return flight, all of those things with them to the stadia, because they will be questioned
at any point,
and again could be picked up by ICE.
Okay, well that.
I mean, I think the World Cup needs to be removed from America, and the Olympics.
Well, I mean, they've always sort of held it in worse places in the Middle East. Well, comparably bad places in the Middle East.
At least people weren't being I mean, it reminds me of a certain country in a certain time.
I know,
when
right?
somebody's coming up to you and saying, "Can I see your papers?"
Yeah,
please?
I think we both. Yeah, I think we're.
I mean, it's extraordinary.
But then it's very
behaviour.
closely related to the story underneath that in the Washington Post, which is Trump so force and other warnings to other cities where he's sending, indeed ICE and the National Guard, which Marines, the National Guard, which is meant to be literally a divider between the state and federal power.
Yeah.
Los Angeles has been sort of raging for rioting for sort of getting on 4 days now, and now there are suggestions that Trump might be sending to Atlanta, Chicago, NYC, Washington,
mostly blue states.
Because this is
4 out of 5 are blue states.
Crazy stuff like armed. Because the thing, by the way, the National Guard are armed as well. It's not just the Marines.
Yeah.
Just walking down Fifth Avenue,
looking like it's Fallujah.
Yes.
It's extraordinary times. But this is what Karen Bass was saying, the mayor of LA, and she was saying that, look, we're a test case here because this is any additional protests against federal immigration policies could be met with equal or greater force, and it's a warning to other cities.
So the thing that I think is, I don't want to make a direct read across. Well, there is no direct read across actually to the UK, but a point I would like to make is there have been a few occasions in the UK where in extraordinary circumstances the army has had to be called in. There have been a couple of times when the terrorist threat in London in the recent past.
But they were there to defend us.
So this was exactly the point I wanted to get to, Petrie, which was in very limited circumstances the extraordinary threat to life has been such. Actually, it's been mostly in London, very briefly after the Manchester Arena bombing, very, very briefly. The military has been called in, but called in a like, we're here, it's going to be fine, the threat is high, but we are here to make you feel safe. And having been somebody who's worked in Westminster for a long time, on the rare occasions that I have, very rare occasions, I have seen limited military presence on the streets, I've been desperately reassured by it. What's happening in America, is the complete reversal of that, and that's what's so terrifying. When you see the military, the US forces or the British forces turn up, that should be the moment you go, oh, thank God, somebody's come to help us. And what's happening in the States is a complete perversion of that, and it's terribly, terribly sad.
It's really frightening. I saw Donald Trump today doing a speech at Fort Bragg, and what was the most troubling thing I've seen in a very long time was soldiers standing behind Donald Trump, booing the Biden administration, booing the media, applauding the removal of some First Amendment rights. These were soldiers, Amy. These people who have signed documents to defend the Constitution, not a king, not a dictator,
yes, to be essentially,
and not any presidency.
Well, it doesn't sound particularly sexy, but to be apolitical and frankly disciplined.
Yes. And he was cheering them on, they were booing. When he mentioned, the Biden, you can't do 5 seconds.
It's like a bully kid in the playground.
Yeah.
But the scary thing is, it's the American president.
These soldiers were joining in and booing Democrats, booing Gavin Newsom. That, to me, was terrifying. I worked for years with the military, the British military, and I did bump into the American military. I found them to be absolutely brilliant. When I was in places like Somalia and in Bosnia, they were there. So, and I worked with the United Nations, so there were lots and lots of different soldiers from different places. But I have never imagined seeing them become politicised and be so outwardly, it's out there,
encouraged to do so,
encouraged to do so by their commander-in-chief. Absolutely shocked me to my core. I've never seen that sort of politicisation of any soldier that I've ever met. And I've been around the world with these men and women. They don't talk politics. They're not bothered. They're there to defend us and the Americans there to defend the American people. It really shocked me. I was really blown away by that. Right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to start delving into the British papers. Guess what's on the front of most of them? Rachel Reeves.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's me, Petrie, and with me, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, Amy Fischer. And as I said, the Times, Chancellor turns on the tax and spend taps. Why have they said tax? And we only saw the spend taps come on today. Sure. We don't know about the tax yet, although we suspect that there will be more to come.
I mean, it just didn't take very long after, you know, the Chancellor was saying, here's all my spending, you know, the metaphorical taps have been turning on. It just didn't take very long for people to go, well, that's nice, but how are you going to pay for it? And, you know, pretty much everyone, including, you know, the IFS, who are sort of very extraordinarily well-respected people on this kind of stuff, just said, well, look, there isn't going to be any headroom. It's not going to take a lot. If there's the tiniest
bump in the road.
Bump in a road. I was going to go for some terrible slight wind metaphor, but I couldn't quite think of it. Before she just, you know, is slightly buffeted and then just doesn't have any space. So this does seem a very much... It's strange in that sense, because it just seems very much like she's sort of thinking, oh, it's the beginning of June. I'll just tell people that we're all going to spend more, and hopefully we'll have this nice warm summer when people aren't worrying about their energy bills, and they somehow won't notice their water bills have gone up, and they suddenly won't notice their broadband has gone up, and they suddenly won't notice that inflation is rising or that unemployment is rising. And so they'll all be in a jolly good mood by, you know, the autumn, when I do actually tell them how I'm going to have to raise taxes to pay for all of this spending, particularly the one which is just within the fourth paragraph down in this front page of the Times, which the Treasury has actually basically admitted today, oh, and by the way, even before the Chancellor might have to stand up in the autumn budget to explain all of the taxes to pay for this, you can pretty much guarantee your council tax bills are going to rise 5% year on year. I mean, just without any questions. Yeah. Just without any questions being raised. That's just like a baked-in thing that's kind of what they're going.
Because your council tax is also partly pays for the police, doesn't it? So
there is a police precept indeed. I mean, goodness knows what that means for sort of Birmingham, which, by the way, has almost been a sort of rat-infested hellhole for the best part of sort of 10 months now. And nobody seems to be doing anything. And nobody seems to have been doing anything. I mean, so as I say, like that goes for... And actually, you know, there are some other... I'm just going to be political and say Labour-run councils, which are not that far behind Birmingham in terms of going pretty much bust, by the way. So... Well,
it would be bankrupt if it was allowed to be, wouldn't it?
There are certain rules of that. So even without, as I say, having to wait until the autumn to see exactly what taxes might go up to pay for any of this, we can definitely expect council tax to just be a year-on-year thing rise in this spending review period anyway. And 5%, by the way, on, my council tax bill went up quite a lot this year anyway, as literally everybody else's must have done. So just imagine, because it's cumulative as well, obviously. So it'll be 5% on whatever you're paying now.
So it's gone up.
So not from what you started. Not from what you started as a.
And we can also see, things like our parking permits going up to fill the coffers as well, and parking fines and all of those things going up as well. The other interesting story on the front of the Times for Thursday, the US has threatened to scrap the deal for the AUKUS submarines. Now, I remember this announcement being made. Pentagon has ordered a review into the 2021 pact struck between Britain, the US and Australia to build nuclear-powered attack submarines. And the US defence official said the Pentagon would take an America-first approach. So they've agreed to these deals, they've signed these deals, and now they're just going to tear them up. Can you trust America?
No, but I mean, I assume even with America there must be some, although it'd be pretty thin gruel if obviously, you're sort of somewhere in Barry and Furness where you think one of these big contracts is going to come and all the attendant jobs and whatnot. But I assume for contracts of that size there will be some sort of break clause, but as I say, it will be thin gruel in terms of the overall, what the overall expectation might have been for one of those contracts sort of going there. So it's not particularly happy news on the front of the.
No, it really isn't.
Times.
The FT, I think we'll brush past that. Again, it's Reeves and the nuclear submarine deal with the US hangs in the balance. The Metro is saying the spend of austerity, Reeves' claim as she boosts cash for the NHS housing and asylum scheme. Well, she didn't tell us anything about that, but tax rise warnings grow.
But I was surprised editorially that the Metro went so hard after her.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the Metro is a bit more sort of middling, but no, they've gone spend of austerity.
Yeah.
They I sort of took that as being. Well, you take it either way. That sort of now we're coming out of austerity, but I think there was a little bit of a sting in the tail there. If you see what I.
Yeah, no, I totally. I thought exactly the same thing.
Okay.
That it's this pathetic spend, and we're in austerity anyway. That's what I took it to mean.
Okay, yeah.
The Daily Telegraph. This is the Chancellor that lazy, feckless Britain deserves. Apparently, that's above the title. I don't quite know what that story is, but Reeves hits police and defence to fund NHS. I was saying earlier, Amy, that I thought that Labour were doing a root and branch review on the NHS and they weren't going to keep throwing money into the black pit.
Do we not remember Wes Streeting this time a year ago? I mean, when we talked about...
We're going to do a big review.
Yeah, and when we talked about honesty in politics, when we talked about honesty in politics, sort of 10 minutes ago, Wes Streeting did... during the general election, and yes, then they had the big review when they first came in. But Wes Streeting literally said the answer to what's going on in the NHS cannot be just throwing more money at it. He said that on at least 3 big set piece occasions. These weren't like throwaway lines in like interviews. These were,
promise you we won't be wasting
huge,
more
we won't
money.
just be throwing. And what have they done since then? There've been the enormous pay rises for junior, well above inflation pay rises for junior doctors, which they're probably going to be asking it for again quite shortly. There was the big review 2 months after Labour formed a government, and now we're just straight back in with this sort of huge bung. I still haven't quite got my head around the abolishing of NHS England, by the way.
No, I haven't either.
Because, yes, OK, it's a quango, and quangos are extraordinarily expensive, but you can't just sort of knock down a metaphorical building without having some idea
of what's replacing it.
You can't just remove the foundations, even if they were cracked foundations, without going, well, we might need to pour a bit more. I don't know where I'm going with this laboured housing metaphor, but you take my point. I'm not saying.
Who's running the NHS?
Who's running the NHS?
No one.
I'm certainly not defending NHS England because it was a huge, to use an overused word about quangos, bloated. But it was just sort of this announcement for the day, and I kind of went, I must read into that. Let's read into that later because that's really interesting if that's what they're doing and they're going after the quangos. And then it was just sort of like, right, they've abolished it. Well, I mean, that's very interesting of itself, because if they've abolished it and the NHS actually hasn't fallen over, then fine, go about abolishing some more stuff. I mean, look, I'm not being reductionist, but there's something going on there.
No, you're absolutely right. We didn't follow that, did we? And say, well, who is running the NHS now? But I genuinely, I do remember him saying, well, we're not just going to throw money at this, because clearly
money cannot be the answer, was their headline, which they got.
And yet since then, they've this 29 billion, I think there was another 14 billion and then some other billions as well that were given to the NHS.
And almost all of it is going on the day-to-day, it's day-to-day running costs. You see, this is the thing about the spending review. It is divided into the capital, which is essentially the long-term investment in infrastructure and whatnot, and then the day-to-day. And almost all of the NHS stuff is going into the day-to-day, because let's remember, the Labour government cancelled all of the planned new hospitals anyway on literally like day one when they came in. So this is literally just day-to-day. It's literally just throwing money down the plug hole of the sort of gushing tap.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I was talking to Vicky Price earlier, and I said, talked about it going what will happen to this 29 billion a year will go in wages.
The day-to-day running cost. That's not,
and it won't go to the front line. It won't go to improving anything. It won't go to shortening waiting lists. It won't do anything.
Well, they say that the government still has their commitment to shortening waiting lists by sort of 18 weeks. But I mean, again, it's this whole, what is that phrase? Jam today, whatever the thing is, tomorrow. Because any of the pledges they've made around waiting lists, more affordable housing, stopping spending on migrants and hotels, it's all premised on stuff that's going to nominally happen in like 4 or 5 years' time. Most people literally plan, what, six months-ish, maybe 4 months, 6 months-ish, maybe a year, 2 years. Not literally, I'm thinking about what my household budget looks like in 2028.
No. I know. I just don't think we can get our head around it, and I'm so cross. I'm so annoyed with it all. Gibraltar's borders to be policed by Spain in latest surrender deal. That is the Telegraph's take on it anyway. So Keir Starmer has been accused of surrendering Gibraltar after striking a deal that allows Spain to check passports on the rock. Britain has agreed a deal with Europe and Madrid to place Spanish border officials at airports and ports of the British territory as part of a dual entry system. I mean, I don't think we're handing Gibraltar back.
I don't mind this, because if you're
I don't mind it either.
If you're crossing,
I don't think it's
obviously
surrender.
Gibraltar being like attached by a little peninsula to Spain.
It's a tiny little thing.
If you're going over the landy bit, like for work or whatever, like that's not being checked or attached. No. But like, I think if somebody's arriving by port or by airport, well, why wouldn't Spain want to sort of slightly go? Because otherwise it would just be too easy.
Just to walk across the bridge.
To literally walk across the bridge and be like, oh, I'm...
Yeah.
There seems to be this like, kind of, again, weird duality that Britain seems to be getting very het up about whether this is an erosion of British sovereignty over in Gibraltar, sharing that little peninsula kind of walkover bit with Spain, yet doing nothing on a grand scale with a huge number of migrants arriving here by boats. Yeah. I mean, there is a real sort of dichotomy there, and some of the outrage being expressed and political approach to it, I would argue.
I mean, the only reason we wouldn't hand Gibraltar is quite a useful military base, isn't it? That's about it,
Didn't
really.
seem to stop us with Chagos, though.
No, it didn't. It didn't. But I don't know. I think that's a bit disingenuous, that headline. The Guardian, Reeves gambles on renewing Britain to win the trust of voters. That's the Guardian. And the Eye, tax rises now inevitable to pay for Reeves' $2 trillion.
Again,
spending.
Interesting editorial choice for the Eye.
Yeah. Cheap loans for builders to boost housing unveiled. I wonder if that make much difference. And a reckless splurge. And our children, we and our children, will be paying it off for years. This is written by Jason Groves with extra editorial by Andrew Neil as delusional drivel. This was in a class of its own. The Daily Mail saying voters were last night braced for swinging tax rises after Rachel Reeves embarked on an unprecedented spending spree.
Well, look, as we've just said, a few of the other papers, like the Eye, editorially didn't quite do what I expected them to, but then here with this, the Mail does exactly what it says on its tin sometimes, which is, I wouldn't have expected them to
take any other line.
And they are pretty unequivocal about what they think. I mean, always when you get the word swinging tax rises within the first sort of five words of the sentence, you know where the general thrust of it is going to go. And as I say, you know, that's the Daily Mail does what the Daily Mail does, and that's what
it does. Yeah. Well, above the title though, Liz Jones, why at 66 I will never have sex again.
Well, I mean, they obviously.
Why is that front page news?
Well, they obviously. Well, I don't know why I'm saying obviously, but yes. So the bottom 2/3 is exactly what you would have expected the Mail to do with the spending review, and then the top bit is really baffling.
People are going, oh, I'm going to buy that.
No, but this is what I mean. The top bit, the bottom 2/3 is exactly what you expected, but the top bit is like, what? Why?
Why? Who? And who cares? It's would be my statement. But anyway, and why are you talking about it? Anyway, a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fischer, former Director of Comms for the Tory Party. The Sun newspaper for Thursday, Vive la Farce. Quite a good headline. As Reeve says, asylum hotels will be open until 2029. French cops shrug as more boats of illegals head to the UK. What's not, I don't think it's been pointed out here, is that the French police are not allowed to go into the water.
No.
So that is the issue here. They're trying to change the rules so that they can go into the water, and then they'll be able to stop them. And the people get into the boat in the water, so we don't ever see it on the shore. The boats are not on the shore anymore. We don't see them. They go offshore.
I understand the point, but having been in the Home Office and sat through somewhat painful negotiations some years ago with France about exactly whose responsibility was for where when small boats are leaving from, Sangatte. The camp is not quite as big there now as it was, as I say, some sort of 7, 8, 9 years ago. I mean, they weren't always as brilliantly helpful as they could have been, but I take your point. That restriction is there. look, for me, this front page was just sort of following on from a huge story The Sun had on Saturday, which was that they just whacked this big figure on the front page and several pages inside, saying, you know, £4.7 billion a year. That's all the tax from the population of Manchester is the equivalent of what is being paid for migrants to stay in hotels. So, you know, this is why The Sun is not letting this particular sort of migrant spending shambles go, because they really sort of nailed their colours to the mast there when they went so big on this particular figure. You know, all of the tax to the population of Manchester a year.
I mean, I mean, everybody can see this is now completely unacceptable and completely out of control. But what's even more unacceptable is Keir Starmer's seemingly unwillingness to deal with this in any
meaningful way. And look, I am just going to sort of, sorry to use a horrible phrase, I am just going to get my ovaries out here, by the way, because all of these, you can actually also see it by the way of the picture that's on the front page of the Sun, and you know, 90% of migrants staying in these hotels, they're male. You know, what do we think have happened to any of the young women or girls? I mean, it's just, there is obviously the issues about essentially people trafficking and the gangs, by the way, the people traffickers who are making money out of this. But we are talking essentially about young male economic migration. So goodness knows what's going on with the sort of dichotomy of all of these young men coming here saying they're escaping persecution and all the rest of it. But well, then why isn't anyone asking questions of, well, OK, well, if we're letting you stay because of persecution, what's happened to the other 50% of the population, i.e. the women and girls who are still left there?
You've just abandoned.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, some people, the argument is that it's the young men are the forerunners, aren't they? Because they're more likely to be able to manage the journey.
I accept
and all
that to some degree.
Although I did see a baby being chucked on a boat this afternoon.
I accept that to some degree, but it's so overwhelmingly male and so overwhelmingly
young men.
Yes, yeah. And so I wouldn't want that. I think that is an issue that sometimes gets a bit lost in the general headline figures about, you know, money spent on hotels and whatnot. There is a genuine sort of humanitarian, dare I say it, female-related point here too. Yeah,
without a question. And so you would argue more so, especially women from places like Afghanistan and Iran. Yeah, these are. If Keir Starmer doesn't get a grip on this in some real, proper way,
it will do for him.
It will do for him. Reform will win. Yeah, and it's as simple as that, because people believe that Reform will be able to do something about it. I don't believe they will, any more than Keir Starmer can find an easy answer. But because of you know, global laws and all of that, that they won't be able to do what people think they'll be able to do. But it's got to stop. It has got to stop. And they've got to get a grip on and stop saying smash the gangs. We know that is abjectly stupid. It's just a lie. It's just dumb. It's dumb, and we all know it. Mirror gone with a very different front page. Pay back our 122 million for faulty PPE. A firm linked to the Tory peer Michelle Mone is being sued for 122 million over unusable surgical gowns. This was the free for all where there was a pub landlord who was also starting
crazy
to do PPE.
bidding contracts.
I wish I'd known. I would have gone for it.
So this story's been running for, gosh, at least 3 or 4 years, yeah. I think. And obviously there is still the ongoing inquiry into kind of COVID and exactly who was doing what, where, and
stealing money.
Stealing money, and why were some people being fast track and all the rest of it. And Michelle Mone, you know, somewhat dubbed by the tabloids as, you know, sort of Baroness Bra, for that is how she made a lot of money as a businesswoman by having, I think it was Ultimo, the lingerie outlet. She is one of the people who has, as I say, over the last 2 or 3 years been named as having a contract which needs probing. Nick Summerlad is the Mirror's kind of go-to person on sort of investigation stuff. So, you know, it's on the front page here. It's got a couple more pages, 4 and 5 inside, and it probably isn't going to go anywhere
No,
soon.
it really isn't. I mean, there's been some Michelle Mone as well recently, sort of liquidating assets a lot. There was something that was in the back of my mind.
And there was a suggestion about what assets they were sharing. This you know, sort of the partner that she had. And as I say, because it's been rumbling for a few years now, and you know, she is often the most sort of visible person who gets talked about for having some real questions about quite how much money was literally being made during a time of national crisis when people were dying for lack of personal protective
gear. I mean, it is such a scandal, all of it. The Daily Express: brace for tax pain to pay for Rachel's fantasy spending. That's there as well. And the Daily Star: God only knows what we'll be without you. And this is tributes pouring in for the Beach Boys co-founder and singer-songwriter Brian Wilson, who has died aged 82.
Well, I think we all know a Beach Boys hit, the one
I can't bear the Beach Boys.
I don't think. I'm so pleased you said. No, I'm not so pleased you said that. I literally said to somebody.
I switch it off
before any of this news about him dying. I was saying to a friend earlier in the week, because we happened to be in a cafe where I get around. I'm not going to try and say, but I literally turned to her and said, I can't stand the Beach Boys. I know that's sacrilege. And then she messaged me on Wednesday saying, Amy, I think like you've killed off Brian Wilson. I like to think coincidence is not causation, but it was just unfortunate. Yeah, literally earlier in the week I just said I can't stand them. They drive me absolutely bananas. Apart from maybe Sloop John B.
Possibly, but
like
it's just that
push. I wouldn't choose.
It's that era of music. That sound is I just can't.
It's too much. I know.
Can't bear it. I literally. I'm sorry he's dead. I know
so
that
am I, and I really hope I didn't somehow kill him off.
I know that he's incredibly important in music and things like that. But if that ever comes on my radio, it goes off. It's just not for me in any way, shape or form. And so I'm sorry that he has died, but Liz Hurley is alive and well and naked in her birthday suit at 60. Great, good for her.
I mean, she looks quite nice. I'm not sure why one would want to be doing that.
No. Maybe she and Liz can get together and have a chat about really boring stuff that nobody cares about. Possibly an idea. Amy Fischer, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And now, though, it is over to you, and I'd like you to give me a call, please, because this is your hour. This is the phone-in hour. It is the only one on the station that you can now use to have your say, to have your voice heard, a whole hour. So what I want to ask you is, do you think that Rachel Reeves have got her priorities right? And when you're looking at this spending, bearing in mind that many people and many front pages are suggesting that we will have to pay for this in tax rises, are you prepared to pay it? Do you think that the priorities are so good, they're so right, the spending is spot on, that you don't mind having to cough up a little bit extra money to make sure that Rachel Reeves can afford these promises that she has made? We'll dig into some of the numbers, not too deeply because it's boring, but we'll talk about it a little bit in just a while. But do give me a call, 0344 499 1000 and text 87222.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. That gives us a whole hour together. And just before we get into the topic of the phone-in, I got a lovely message earlier on from Daisy McAndrew. Do you remember Daisy? She used to present on this station. Wonderful human being, a brilliant broadcaster as well. She sent me a photograph of herself and somebody that she'd met on at an event. And that guy is Declan Murray. And she said, look, he's your biggest fan. Can you please say hello? So Declan Murray in Barcelona. I hope you hear this. I hope you get to hear this. Thank you very much indeed for liking what I do. It's always so lovely to hear that. And I'm very pleased for you that you got to meet the fabulous Daisy McAndrew as well. Nee Sampson, if you remember Daisy Sampson. That's when I started watching her anyway. So there you go. Declan, thank you very much indeed for listening or watching or whatever it is that you do. You're always welcome to phone in because this is the phone-in hour now. So what are we talking about? The spending review. I know. You're probably going, oh, God, do we have to? But the thing is, yes, we do, because this is going to impact us, whether that be in the cuts that are coming or whether that be in the inevitable tax rises that are coming. This was a significant spend. There's a lot of money that our Chancellor is planning to spend, and a lot of what she's relying on, and literally just got her fingers crossed on this, is that the economy grows. That's what she's hoping for. And if the economy doesn't grow substantially enough before October, she's going to have to come back to us for more tax. So the question really is, nobody's happy to pay more tax, right? But when we go through the spending review and what it is she's going to spend the money on, do you think, well, that's reasonable, I suppose? Let's go through some of the biggies. Of course, the NHS is the biggest single benefactor. £29 billion per year for the next 3 years. But I absolutely remember being told that the answer to the NHS problems were not to throw more money at it. We were promised there'd be a review, a root and branch review. Do you remember? We were promised that I think it was Wes Streeting was saying, we're going to, the answer isn't throwing more money. He went big on that because we are all aware the budget now for the NHS is nearly £200 billion a year. And it's still not enough. Nurses are threatening to go on strike. Junior doctors said they would, and they will go back on strike for more money. They wanted a 30% lift, and they didn't get 30%. I think they got 12.50. I can't remember what they got, but they got a decent increase, but it wasn't what they wanted. And they said, we will be back for more. And nurses now have snubbed the 3.6% pay rise that they've been offered. So what's to say that this £29 billion won't just immediately go on wages and not into any substantive change to the NHS? Will it be spent on new machines? Will it be spent on... And I don't think we should still be just throwing money at this organisation. Where are the savings that we were promised? Where's this review that we were promised? Where's this... we're not going to do that. It's your money. We're not just going to throw it at the NHS. I want to see that review. I want to see where savings can be made, because we know they can. We know they can. Procurement alone is an absolute mess across the NHS, with different districts and different areas paying different things for syringes. I mean, the NHS is huge. It's one of the biggest employers in Europe. It has a massive billions and billions and billions of pounds worth of spend. Why the procurement teams are not able to negotiate fantastic deals for the whole of the NHS, I've never understood. Because they should be able to. So, no, I don't support an extra 29 billion being thrown at the NHS. I don't. Not until we know what it's going to be spent on. I don't support it. Defence I do support, because I think we're in a bigger pickle than we're being told. And I think we do have to gear up. Some of the other things I'm just looking at going, so transport links, great. I mean, I'm thrilled that people, you know, in Manchester will get extra trams and there'll be train lines that actually work. And of course, that is really, really important for the North. But is that really going to make the difference for you? And then we're told, well, we're going to save money by not housing migrants in hotels by 2029. That's straight out of Reform's playbook. Where are you going to put them? Because they're not stopping. They're not stopping coming over. 15,000 so far this year. It's set to be a record-breaking year. Usually averages around 30,000. They think it'll be about 45,000 this year. Alone. Oh, great. Where are you going to put them? And it's not going to be free, is it? So whatever money you think you're going to save, be honest about it. I mean, you chose hotels, presumably, because they were the cheapest way of doing it. And the most accessible way of doing it. So what's your answer to that? What's your solution to that? The Tories tried Bibby Stockholm, that floating whatever it was. That's now been decommissioned. Complete waste of money. Because it was considered to be, you know, not very nice to put people on there. So what is Rachel Reeves going to do instead? I don't believe her. I don't believe it. I simply, I just don't get it. What's your plan? We're quite savvy now in this country. We know stuff now. We're much more switched on politically. And yet they still talk to us with a basic language that you would talk to a 5-year-old. Almost patting us on the head and saying, don't worry your pretty little head about it. Well, I do worry my pretty little head about it. Not that I'm, you know, saying I've got a pretty head or anything, but you know what I mean. Turn of phrase. So what do you make of it? Do you buy any of it? Do you buy what she's selling? Oh, and she also wants you to be patient. Not a patient in the NHS. She'd rather you weren't one of those, because that would save them some money, but patient. I think we've been patient for long enough, frankly. We're always being told, aren't we? Oh, it'll get better tomorrow. It'll get better. Oh, no, look, hang on, next week it'll be. Oh, if it's not next week, it'll be next month. If it's not next month, it'll be next year. And what they're saying is in 10 years' time. 10 years' time? They're not even going to still be in power. Everything they're suggesting now will be reversed. It's a mess. 0344 499 1000. Grace is on the line now from London. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Hi. What do you make of this then, this spending review? Has she done you proud?
No, and I feeling very politically homeless. I've always voted Labour, but I think I probably won't again. I can't understand why she's got all this money to throw around at various things, but to fund increased defence, she's specifically taking money out of the overseas aid budget.
Yeah.
Why is there money for X, Y, and Z, but in order to pay for one particular thing that she's going to increase spending on, she's going to take money away? I really don't get it. Why is there a magic money tree for a whole bunch of things, but defence apparently requires taking money away from the very poorest people in our world? I'm not saying that we don't need to increase defence spending, although I'm a bit dubious about it, because I know that a lot of defence money has been misused, such as on some tanks that were apparently unusable. So in the same way that there should be an assessment of where NHS money is going, there needs to be, I would imagine, a look at defence.
But there has to be oversight. The procurement, but government procurement is woeful. It is really bad, and that you've also got a lot of lobbyists kicking around with big fat checkbooks and wads of cash, who sidle up to MPs and sidle up to ministers, and take them to very expensive football games, and you know, it is. There is no doubt about it. Where there is a big budget, there is corruption. There absolutely is. I'm not accusing any individuals, but there absolutely is, and bad decisions are made based on very flimsy sucking up, basically. So I agree with you on that. But the foreign aid, I can tell you why they're going after the foreign aid budget. It's because it's popular.
People in the world don't vote for them.
Yeah, and it's a popular move in this country.
I mean, one of the reasons that I think it's popular, I mean, I'm afraid, I think part of the reason it's popular to cut overseas aid, or it's popular to some extent, is that there are some people who just refuse to care about human beings who don't happen to be of the same origin as themselves. But also, I think that quite a lot of people have been led into, and I say quite a lot of people because I'm having conversations about this all the time, it seems that an awful lot of people think that it all gets wasted. And that's just not true. Now, like you just said, there is corruption, but unfortunately, it's not just aid money that gets misspent on occasion, and a lot of aid money can be spent really, really well and does make an amazing impact. So now, because they're cutting the overseas aid budget, the government is looking at cutting programs that have been providing education for girls and providing important vaccinations, and finally trying to get rid of polio and things like that. Projects have been going on that have been making an amazing difference. It doesn't all just go to dictators' pockets, as some people like to think.
I mean, it certainly used to, but they have changed the way these monies are sent now, and apparently it is more traceable in terms of the money goes into the country, where does it go next? Apparently it is more traceable, but again, they don't explain. They never tell us. They treat us like children. Tell us where the money's going, how it's being spent, so we can see it.
Anger gets more clicks than other things.
True.
So certain news outlets will find a little example that they can portray in a particular way.
Like a puppet show for transgender elephants or something.
Yeah, and then they'll make a lot of hay from that, and people will click on it. I mean, with regard to trans things, with the USAID budget, there was a lot of talk about how that was supposedly being spent on various trans things, and I would completely agree that no money should be spent on trans operas or whatever, but the projects that were being referred to weren't coming from the USAID budget. Anyway, they were coming from the State Department budget. So my point is that cutting USAID made no sense with regard to the funding of those projects. And I mean, in this case here in Britain, some of the aid money that gets spent actually is what's being used for the hotels that people are staying in, and some people don't seem to realise that. So less money is going to help the world's poorest people.
Yes, of the 12, it's about 12.6 billion, I think, it is the foreign aid budget. It's somewhere in that region, and certainly I think about 4 billion of it has been siphoned to pay for towards the hotel bills for migrants, and I think
a bunch of that's just in the pockets of wealthy hoteliers. And
they've made millions, yeah.
And when aid money is spent well, it can make so much impact. If you pay for the education of a child in one of the poorest parts of the world, it costs a tiny fraction of what school here costs per child, and it enables them to support their community when they're older. If we want countries to be self-sufficient, then we need to enable children to go to school and to have food. And if we want the world to be a more stable place, we need people to have an education so that they can gradually take back power from dictators and run their countries. And they have so much ingenuity and determination to make a better a society. If you see children in poorer parts of the world, they all want to be teachers and doctors because they want to make their societies better. But they can't do that if they're literally starving to death, and our government goes and cuts some of the most cost-effective things that money gets spent on. And the aid budget was tiny to begin with. It was 0.5% of GDP. Then Sunak cut it to
0.3.
It was 0.7. Yeah. It was 0.7. Sunak cut it to 0.5, and now it's being cut by the Labour Party to 0.3. And a bunch of that 0.3 stays in the country to pay for hotels anyway. And I just think, she somehow got far bigger sums of money to throw at the NHS or whatever. And I'm not saying we don't need NHS spending, but she's got far bigger amounts to spend on other things. And yet, for some reason, we need to take money out of the aid budget for defence. Why not get that money from somewhere else? I don't understand.
It's all about optics. Look at the USA cutting USAID. I don't know why they don't just call it USAID. It's spelled. You have to spell out AID anyway. USAID. That barely anybody cared. It's a popular. Why are we sending that money overseas anyway? That's what people think, and they think that. And I have often used this argument, saying, well, do you think if we did cut it, that 12 billion would go into helping you? Because it wouldn't. It would be wasted on another HS2 project, or some other nonsensical, ridiculous waste of money. Because that's the way it happens. It doesn't go to anything good.
I hear people increasingly talking about how this is a Christian country, and for a long time politicians have talked about British values, and I wonder what British values are, or what people mean when they say it's a Christian country, if we genuinely don't care about little children getting polio. What do people mean about
Well, they
British
mean that,
values?
to look after yourself first. That's what they think. They think that's a good Christian value, is to thine own self be true.
That's the opposite of Christian values. Christian values are that you love your neighbour. And when Jesus said love your neighbour, he was specifically talking about people from other places. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, that's where that line comes from. He's talking about people from other places. And if you are a Christian, you actually do need to put other people first sometimes.
Well, what about the argument of, all charity begins at home?
Well, that's if people have that view, then they can have that view. But they can't say that and say that we have Christian ethics as a country, because charity begins at home. A lot of people throw it around, but it's just a slogan that someone wrote down a couple of centuries ago. It's not in the Bible. They can have that view, that's what they believe in, but it's not in the Bible. It's just a slogan that people use to try and justify only caring about people who are like themselves. And I personally care about human beings equally, whether they're down the road or further away. So when money can be spent really cost effectively to help people who are in really severe need, I think that's exciting, and I think it's a shame that Reeves doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, and also we've got to mention as well the soft power that aid gives us, having doctors and teachers and people in different countries. That child that has been schooled and fed by Britain is not going to grow up hating Britain. And that has an important impact. You've also got the impact of, if we're inside a country, we can get more intelligence out of the country that we're in helping. There's pointless saying that doesn't happen and isn't an important part of it, because it is. And so we risk losing that soft power that we have around the world. And it is significant and it is important.
I think a lot of people are forgetting how connected our world is. It's really evident to me that Russia and China are increasingly having influence in the global south.
China has taken over most of America's aid work.
Yeah, and that, I'm concerned about aid because I'm concerned about the people who are in greatest need. But if you're only concerned about yourself here as a British person, you should be worried about how people in the global south are being manipulated by Russia and China to hate the West. You might be concerned, if you're someone who is constantly worried about people in small boats, about the fact that more people in small boats are going to turn up because of their countries being so unstable, and we're choosing to allow more instability by taking away aid. You might be concerned about the fact that various programs to control disease are being ended, and that puts us at risk as well. And like you said, soft power. There's an awful lot of good that's done for Britain by aid programs. I mean, the reason that they started giving aid in the first place was mostly because of, Britain's own interests. So I'm concerned about the people who are in the very greatest need, but it is also in Britain's interest.
Aid is all about our interest. Aid really, in truth, really has very little to do with being altruistic. It's all in our interest, but people don't necessarily see that. And a lot of people as well, Grace, go, well, there are lots of corrupt nations in the world. Why aren't they looking after their own citizens? That would be another argument.
I mean, what we need to keep in mind is that for one thing, we're obviously born into far greater wealth than most people on the planet. Mm-hmm. I know that things are creaking here and that there are things that we need that we don't have, but we are actually living very comfortably compared to most of humanity.
Yes, what's the line? To be born British is to win the lottery of life.
Yeah, and part of the reason for that is because wealth has been extracted from other countries for centuries, and that's still happening. There is actually far more money coming to the developed world, wealthy countries, from the developing world, poor countries, than we give in aid. We're actually still getting far more money coming in this direction because of really dodgy things being done by various international corporations and banks and really unjust debt. I don't think you saw that program with Michael Sheen a few weeks ago where he talked about debt faced by some people in Wales. Their debt is bought up by, vulture capitalists who can make money off of the debt faced by these people in Wales who are struggling. And it's horrendous for these people in a deprived community within Wales. And they can't get out of the debt because of the interest payments and how the interest payments keep going on. But there are poor countries in our world who are in the situation of those Welsh people that he was talking with, and money is being extracted unjustly from some poor countries, far more than we're actually giving in aid. But it's also the case that throughout history, for centuries, we've been taking money via colonialism. Now, we didn't choose that ourselves. That's not our fault personally, because we didn't choose that history.
But it's sped up our advancement.
We are beneficiaries.
Yeah, it's put us where we are in the world now because of that. You're absolutely right. Grace, I love talking to you. Thank you. Great call, but I've got to go because I'm really late to a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie with you, and we're talking about the spending review that Rachel Reeves just bored us all senseless with today, and it was boring, not only because of the way she delivers it, but also because we knew all of this, and the things that we really wanted to know we don't know yet. And that is what they're going to do to the welfare budgets, particularly to those with disabilities, because those cuts are coming, what other cuts are and how they're going to affect us. So those are the things that we really wanted to know. All we heard about today was multi-billion pound capital projects in the north of the country, which are no doubt necessary. Big funding for the NHS and the Ministry of Defence, a little bit for the police, although they're saying after they've taken that money for wage increases, there won't be anything left. So there's some people are suggesting that this is a form of austerity, and also we're going to have to pay for it with tax rises because we're not as rich as we think we are. Well, we are wealthy as a country, but we also spend more than we've got. So it's not good. Joe has sent a message saying, a penny in a dictator's pocket is a penny too much. Why should we be funding foreign governments? Some corrupt, some careless, when we've got families here choosing between heating and eating. Charity begins at home. When those nations can manage their finances with transparency and accountability, then and only then should they see a single penny from us. And Joe, I had that big conversation just then with Grace. And I think that probably answered some of the points that you've made. Andrew from Salisbury says, Rachel Reeves' priorities are purely self-serving. Worst government since the 70s. I mean, that's saying something, isn't it? I mean, after the last shower we had. A hardcore raver has said, don't you just love it when they state the UK is the fastest growing economy in the G7? What they fail to mention is just how much worse off the other G7 economies are, and the UK is financially on its bum. And financially we are. If you look at the breakdown of what money comes in and what money goes out, it's like I struggle to see how we can afford anything, really. But they forget also that it's our money. So I don't think they spend it very well. That's what I'm going to say. Joanna from Salisbury says, Rachel Reeves is disguising the real cost to us, taxing, disguised and repackaged, all hidden or pushed into the future, a gamble that won't pay off. It is a gamble. This is a gamble. She is gambling on the economy improving before the autumn budget, before October, which is winter really, isn't it? Well, everybody says autumn, but it is. But yeah, it is a gamble. She's literally got her fingers crossed, I think. So do they think we're stupid? So 2 examples that I picked up. Taxes in the autumn for defence. It's a gift for the EU and the UK. Defence covers infrastructure, for example, roads, rail and energy security. So we'll be funneled into things they want to spend it on, but hidden like net zero. And closing hotels by 2029. Migrants present so far 74% have been allowed to stay. The problem will be pushed onto local councils and ending up in social housing, costing us more council tax. Then the real cost of benefits, etc., can be hidden from us, the taxpayers. I fear you're right. And Helen from Bognor has sent me a lovely message. Helen, thank you very much indeed. That was very kind of you. So listen, give me a call, because this is your money they're spending. And do you believe it? Do you buy any of it? I don't buy any of it. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm looking at this spending and just going, well, the infrastructure, for example, 113 billion, I think it is, on infrastructure. That's not. We know what's going to happen to that. The budgets are going to explode. We know that. Everything any government in this country tries to actually do, build or make is a disaster. It's way over budget, way over time. It's like the nuclear power station Hinkley. It's 5 years late and it's gone up from 17 billion to 46 billion. So that money that's being set aside to build a few tram lines and a bridge or two and a bit of a railway line, that's not going to cover it. We know that. It's going to be late and it's going to be 10 times more expensive. It's ridiculous. We know that won't work. So I'm not buying that. I don't suppose anybody up north is buying it either. It'll take years and years. I mean, so far we build bridges with nowhere to go, with no road, no nothing. The HS2 has been an absolute unmitigated disaster. The budget of that is absolutely out of control. And even though they've cut the northern leg of it, it's still out of control. It's ridiculous. We can't build anything. It's pathetic. I don't know why we're so bad at it, but pathetic. And people just stuffing their pockets full of taxpayers' money, and they go, "Oh, sorry, the bill's gone up. Oh, yeah, it's a bit of a delay." It's ridiculous. They think we're mugs. Well, we are mugs because we take it. So I'm not buying that. I'm not buying the NHS money either. I think that will go in wages. We won't see any of that. That won't be helpful at all. And I think that it's just a black hole of nothingness. Just throwing money at it won't ever fill it up. It'll always be hungry. It'll always want that. Defence spending isn't nearly enough and isn't nearly soon enough. None of it works for me. What about you? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie here, and we're discussing the spending review. And just looking at a bunch of numbers and multi-billion pound capital projects that we know are going to be over budget and over time. Extra money being thrown into the black pit of despair that is the NHS, with no clear guidance as to how that's going to improve. We haven't had any results, have we, about how, this is how we're going to improve things, this is how we're going to cut back on the spending on the... None of that. And I just don't... I just look at it and go, what are they doing? What are they doing? Plus, we're going to have to pay more tax, one way or the other, to fund all of this. Glenn is in Southampton. Morning, Glenn.
Hello, how you doing? All right?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad. Yeah. Well, save money. They're going to put more money for the NHS. Are they going to give another 300 million to that Michelle Mone and her husband? You know, instead of getting it back, you know, that's how they waste money.
I agree. I mean, this is what drives me nuts, Glenn, is they're very quick to spend our money, like it because it doesn't belong to them. They don't just spending it. It's just somebody else's money, isn't it?
Weird how he become a peer, wasn't it? You know, David Cameron's mate.
Yeah.
You know, he was dodgy and all, because when he left as Prime Minister, he went into that company and they mysteriously went skint. What about all the millions that disappeared? What about that? You know, we know that there is so much. It's not just waste. It is wanton. It is, when you look at HS2... £122 million of PPE that never arrived.
It's, I mean, it's disgusting, but it's not their money, so they've written it off, haven't they? I mean, didn't the last government write it off?
Well, with the immigration problem, right, you know, they're coming out, you know, I'm not racist, they're coming over here getting paid. Why can't the government send me 20 fellas, right, and earn their keep, digging the roads up, doing the potholes, eh? They'd soon go back home then, wouldn't they, eh? You know, if there's fit and able men, let them come here, I'll train them how to do the potholes, you watch them get back on the boats and go home. It's simple, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we couldn't use them as slaves. That would be wrong. We'd have to pay them.
You know, no, we pay them.
Yeah.
They can't just sit in hotels and go around delivering food, can they? You know.
No, listen, but I've always maintained that I think that anybody that comes across should be allowed to work. I mean, they should be able to work for their keep.
Well, yeah, if anybody's listening, there's the offer. I'll take 20, 30 fellas tomorrow. I'll train, I'll do all in-house training. I'll give them a month, and I guarantee they think, nah, this ain't right. I didn't come here for this. That's it. You know, all your potholes will be filled. Do you know what I mean?
I really don't have a problem with migrants having limited work permits.
Yeah.
But the government won't give them work permits.
We're sticking them in hotels, right, and saying just stay there. Whatever you want, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, they should be prepared to work for their keep. It's as simple as that. Yeah. And I agree with you.
Yeah, talkTV got my number. The offer's there. Yeah, I'll take as many as you want to give me. All right, I can give them accommodation, training, whatever, and I guarantee within a month they think, nah, I didn't come here for that. That's it, because it's hard work. But if they're up for it, you've got my number. That's it. The offer's there. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, you'd accommodate them as well, feed them.
I'd accommodate. I've got houses everywhere. Yeah, all over the place. Loads of rooms, caravans, I've got everything. But I'm telling you now, as soon as they start digging up driveways and doing tarmac, they go. No.
You reckon? I think that some would, but I think that some would. I mean, I think they're bored.
They can't just come here and do nothing.
I agree. We should give them limited work permits and require them to work.
Well, that'll save you money, all right, and that'll save money on the potholes. And also, I do hope that the NHS don't give her another 300 million. The country's run by idiots, right, that have never done a day's hard work in their life, right? Not one of them, right? What you said at the beginning of the conversation is not their money. In my life, it's had to be my money, yeah? So there you go.
Yeah, you look after your own money better than you look after other people's, right?
Of course I do, but I've had to work hard. So yeah, so you've got the number, and that's it. If an MP comes on, say, Mr. Harris, he'll have as many fellas as you got, right? They'll have brand new beds, everything, brand new pickaxe and brand new boots and all that. And I guarantee they go straight over in their rubber boat back home. Oh no, I guarantee, Petrie, we're too soft. We're too soft, right?
But they say, the government will say that giving migrants or not migrants, but asylum seekers, refugees, the right to work becomes a bigger draw, and then we just get more people coming across.
No, we'd insure them, give them health and safety and all stuff like that. Back in the 50s, when my father left the fairground, it was a travelling family, he had all his shoe, right? There was nothing, and he said to me, son, that was it. He went, I like to work hard. If he didn't work, he wouldn't eat. Yeah? They ain't got the right, Petrie. I ain't against them. They're lazy. Let them come here. Let the little booklet say that. When we come across the channel, we might have to lay tarmac for Mr. Harris. Oh, no, stop that. Let's turn the engine round and go back. They should not be here doing nothing. Yeah?
No, I mean, look, if I don't work, I don't get paid either. I don't get sick pay.
They can have their names on their Ivy jacket if they want. Yeah? So next time there's an MP, you've got my number, tell them to ring me. They can start Monday if they want. I'll come and pick them up in a coat. I don't care.
I don't interview MPs because I spent years of my life that I will never get back interviewing MPs because they're useless.
Multiple pillocks, because that's what they are.
I can't be bothered. Do you know what, Glenn? I can't be bothered.
No, I wish I'd have voted myself in now. The Monster Raven Looney Party, I'd have probably won, wouldn't I? But,
you probably would have done. There's still time.
You look after yourself, right? But just one.
All right, Glenn. You take care of yourself. I will definitely bear that in mind if ever I have the misfortune of having to go down the route of interviewing MPs again. I hope I don't. Honestly, I just used to feel like I was banging my head against the desk when I was talking to them. Awful. Tonya is in Exeter. Hi, Tonya.
Hi there. Yeah. I just looking at while I was waiting on the phone, a little mouse mouse comes out from behind my cooker.
Why aren't you screaming like in Tom and Jerry?
I like mice, and he's just come out. He's looking at me now, thinking, "Can I come out?" And I don't mind if he comes out, but
maybe he's a fan of the show. Maybe he's got something to
say. I'm not sure if he's listening.
Well, then he can go.
I am tempted to give him some cheese because I've got some cheese in the fridge, but I don't know if I should encourage him really.
Oh. If I see him, I'm a bit like the woman on Tom and Jerry. I will scream because they jump.
Oh, you don't like them?
I don't. No, not particularly.
Oh.
But they jump.
Oh right. No, I don't mind him. I wouldn't want the big rat in my house. But he is a mouse. He's only a small mouse, a little field mouse. He is.
Oh, a little field mouse. Yeah, they're quite cute actually.
Yeah, he's all right. But anyway, yeah. So he sort of showed me. But what I was going to say was, a couple of things really. One is I get kind of a bit fed up with this whole ending narrative about, what the politicians are doing is crazy, blah, blah, blah. Because, listen, they're not stupid. That Keir Starmer's a really bright guy, yeah? He's not stupid. He knows exactly what he's doing. It's all deliberate, and it's all designed to collapse, to bring in the New World Order and the digital global dictatorship. It's all deliberate. They want us to think they're idiots. They want us to think they're stupid. That's all deliberate. So when they do all these ridiculous things like give back Gibraltar or whatever else they're doing at the moment, it's all part of the collapse. It's all deliberate collapse, And Agenda 2130, I don't know if you've heard of that. I presume you have.
Yeah, well, I'm more obsessed with Project 2025 at the moment. But yeah, no, I'm not sure. I think they think we're stupid. I don't.
Oh, they do. Yes, so they do. Yes. But we are. I mean, if we can, we are. We are. Well, I'm not. I mean, let's say I'm not, but I don't vote for them. I would never vote for any political party, not now, because I know what their game. Well, I don't trust their game. They lie about everything.
That is a problem, but when people disengage from democracy collapses, and I think that democracy is probably coming to the end of its natural life, certainly in America anyway.
Do you think democracy's in or not? Well, first of all, I don't agree that we're a democracy because universal suffrage in itself is not democracy. So having a vote does not, all we do is vote and then they do what they want. So that
I agree with that.
Democracy. Yeah, we're not democracy.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've got democracy, and I'm not even sure that democracy is necessarily the best system either, really. I mean, I'm an anarchist anyway, so I'm never going to vote in the system, but I don't, I'm not sure.
I think democracy is the best of the bunch. As opposed to autocracy, a kleptocracy, dictatorship, communism. If you look at what goes on in North Korea, what goes on in places like Afghanistan, I think democracy and equality is not perfect. But I do tend to think that it is, even if it is a lie to a degree, it is the best of the bunch. I'd rather be under this than any of the others. Wouldn't you?
And what about the sort of tyranny of the majority thing? I mean, because I've always been in the minority, right? In terms of, I've never had my wishes or what I would want, so I'm always going to be the minority. So what about I know you said about dictator, so it depends on who you get. I mean, you could have in the way I look at it, I don't support the royal family, but let's just say we did just have a king. Now, if that king happened to be a benevolent king, rather than all this silly arguing and never getting anything done and HS2 never gets built, just one king. Now, it could be a tyrant or it could be somebody good.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? And with power, you can have somebody who is benevolent to begin with, but then become absolutely ravaged by power, and we've definitely seen that. And I think power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you look at Putin, you look at any of them that you could mention, they get power that goes to their head, and that's it.
It does, doesn't it? And do you not think, therefore, I often think that when people have the argument over capitalism is evil or communism is an evil economic system or the capitalist economic system. But in my mind, we haven't got capitalism. We've got shareholderism, and when communism was tried as such in, say, the Soviet Union, it wasn't true communism. We never get true capitalism or true communism.
And I think when you look at communism, when you read it in its purest form, it makes the most sense, right, for a balanced world. It works, but when you lift communism off the page, it is just open to that. You know, some of us are equal, but we're all equal, but some are more equal than others, because the society cannot be run on that basis. It does need leaders, and it does need people to make decisions.
Do you not think capitalism in its purest form, also, if it actually was as it says on the tin, would also work? But in my mind, what you just said about is the corruption. In my mind, it doesn't matter what system you have, human beings will become corrupt in power, and because they lie. It's part of survival.
Yeah, it's the same as any sort of collective religion, for example, as well, becomes corrupted by people. You look at Islam and the way it is corrupted by the Taliban, and the way Afghanistan is run. I mean, that is a pure corruption of an extreme corruption of a religion that doesn't require the kind of rules that they've put in place. And I do it, but this is what we mean, isn't it? Though that Tonya, when human beings are involved, Lord of the Flies, you look at that situation, that there is always that human instinct to control, and that's the only defence we have against that is some form of democracy.
And what do you think about anarchy? Because I believe in anarchy. I know people have sort of assume that's chaos, right? But it's not, because it's human beings. Although I'm the first to say man is the most brutal beast of all, above all the other animals. Agreed. That's why we're king of the beasts, because we're brutal as hell. But man also does cooperate. He's also a cooperative animal, because social animals, to survive, we have to cooperate with other men and women to survive. So. In anarchy, people would cooperate in small groups, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be total chaos. And I think it's the oldest system. It was pre-slavery, slavery came in. And in my mind, if you've got a choice between a corrupt rulers, which we always get because power always goes to the head, or just like, human beings getting along however they can, in whatever ways they can, cooperating. And yes, it would be brutal at times. There would be killings. There would be violence. But ultimately, for me, nature is the fairest system. And I look at wildlife and I think, wildlife is cruel, but don't they look happier than us? Look at horses out, and don't they look like they have better lives? They may be shorter lives, but it looks so much better than ours.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I also think that we are in a system now where we're trying to. One of the biggest issues that I think we have as human beings is trying to mitigate all possibilities of dying early, and that's just not possible. It's not realistic.
Yeah, I agree.
And it gives us a God complex, right? If we're not afraid of anything, then what is life? Right.
Yeah, and you're talking about the NHS. I totally agree. No more money into the NHS. Because what we do is it all goes into keeping people alive in the most appalling conditions, often where they've got no quality of life. And I just think the NHS has created its own problems, by the way. And actually, not just the NHS. Medicine as a whole has created its own problems by trying to put the length of life above everything else, above the quality. Of life.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, Tonya, you and I could chat all night, couldn't we?
We could.
We really could. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Right. I've got to take a break, Tonya, because I'm so late. I'm going to get into trouble. But thank you for that call. It was brilliant.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here. And Ernie has sent a message, excuse me, saying, hi Petrie, absolutely loved Grace. What an inspiration. There's so many people who speak on talkTV that are so much more clued up compared to the useless politicians that have never really lived in the real world. That's from Ernie. But like I was saying, I think some politicians, not all, but some politicians do go into politics with the very best of intentions. But I think it goes to their head. I also think they find the red tape at the minute they go through the door is just too much and they can't battle through it. It's incredibly difficult. But then I just think the power, the luxury. I mean, Dorneywood. I mean, what's a Labour Prime Minister doing going to a Grace and Favour home like that? Or Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner who share another blooming mansion somewhere. It goes to their head. Then they quite like it. And then they want to stay in power, not because they want to help us, but because they want to help themselves. That's what I think, anyway. Charlie is in East Sussex. Hello, Charlie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, do you know, quite a mix of people you have on your show tonight. It's quite fascinating. I don't normally listen this late, but, you know, I'm on my way home from a do, and I thought, well, I'll call in.
Brilliant. I'm glad you did.
I'm glad I did. I normally talk to Ian Collins, but what I would say to you is this. Every part of this country seems to be broken, whether it's social cohesion, whether it's, you know, even the pipes that carry our water are leaking.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. I travel quite extensively for work, and I just think to myself, really, where as a country are we heading? Because we seem to be on a downward spiral. And, you know, that lady Grace that called in earlier, fascinating. But I really think that, yes, that we should have a great deal of overseas aid, and we should help people. But there's also the point that, you know, we really need to be building our own infrastructure up. You've only got to look at absolutely everything that's going on in this country, and you say to yourself, well, look, you know, that's broken, it needs fixing. Oh, actually, that's broken, that needs fixing. So where do we actually start? That's what I want to know. And when you look at these politicians, oh, they found money for this and they found money for that, we all know, you and I know, that we're all going to be paying for it.
Yeah.
Regardless, we're all going to be paying for it.
What I want to know, Charlie...
Where do we start, and where can we start?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, where do we start? But what I want to know is that over the last, let's just say 50 years, right, where has all our money gone? If everything is broken and nothing is working properly, where have those trillions of pounds been spent?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? Where has the money gone?
Where has the money gone? Because we should, with those trillions, everything should be tickety-boo, right? Shiny, new, nice. Where's it all gone?
Look, we should be living in spires of crystal, driving, you know, flying cars. With the amount of money, the amount of tax take cars, the amount of tax take on the motorist, we should be.
There shouldn't be a single pothole. There shouldn't be a single issue anywhere ever.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at how, and I will say it, we are absolutely. I mean, I'm talking about the working class of people. I consider myself working class. I've worked all my life.
Yeah, me too.
We are the ones that are propping everything up. We're the ones that really and truly are being fleeced.
Yeah.
You know, my wife needed surgery on her hands because she couldn't pick things up. I had to pay for that myself because I wouldn't certainly have my wife, you know, not being able to pick up a cup.
Yeah.
But that is deemed acceptable by the NHS. You know, wait 18 months So you can't. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know. So where do we start, Petrie? Where really do we start? You can look, and I do see the thing about overseas aid, and I do take people's point where, you know, charity begins at home, but, you know, that charity does begin at home, but you also have to be charitable in other ways. So with the overseas aid budget, yeah, but a much more stringent monitoring of that. You know, you don't want the I don't know, was it some kind of
well, we were still sending money to China until recently. I mean, it's ludicrous, because that's brown envelopes. Don't forget that overseas aid money isn't just about overseas aid. This is about stuffing envelopes full of cash and getting deals done as well.
No, you're right. You're right. But I mean, in the industry I work in, there's a lot of compliance. We're not allowed to do things like that. I'm not allowed to take you out for a meal and say, oh yeah, thanks for that. And by the way, how about this little contract? I mean, you know, that's breaking the law.
Yeah.
And that. Well,
the laws are only for us.
That's
taxes for us, and the laws are only for us. The very rich and the very poor don't adhere to the rules that we adhere to.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think when you're looking at the average person in the street, and you can see why people get angry, and you can see why people are going, oh my God, you know, we've got